All right, I would like to now call the Tuesday, March 25th RTD board meeting to order. We're convened as of 5:33 p.m. I would respectfully ask everyone to remain muted unless you're recognized to speak. Thank you all for joining us for this evening. As the board has moved to in-person meetings for our monthly gatherings, please note that committee meetings of the RTD Board of Directors will still be held remotely via Zoom and will be audio and video recorded. The meeting recordings, along with the unofficial minutes of the meetings, will be posted as soon as practical on the board's website. Visit rtd-denver.com, and a live stream of this meeting is also available via RTD's YouTube page. During tonight's meeting, we also will be providing communication access real-time translation, also known as CART. Anyone who'd like to access this service should send an email to the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com, and a link will be provided. Additionally, the CART transcript can be automatically translated into Spanish for anyone who'd like to access the live transcript of this meeting in Spanish. I would now like to call on Director Whitmore to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Director Whitmore. I will now call on Director Pagliari. Would you please read out loud the land acknowledgement?
The RTD Board of Directors acknowledges that the land on which our buses and trains operate is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, Arapaho, and other contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to these lands. We honor our Indigenous elders who have traveled, inhabited, and stewarded these mountains, hills, and plains throughout generations. May this acknowledgement demonstrate a commitment to working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of inequality of the Native and all historically oppressed peoples, and recognize their current and future contributions in the district as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Pagliari. I'll now call the roll. Treasurer Banker.
Present.
Director Busick.
Here.
Director Catlin.
Here.
Director Chandler.
Present.
Director Geisinger.
Here.
Director Guccinetter.
Here.
Director Guzman.
Present.
Director Harwick.
I'm here.
Director Larson.
Here.
Secretary Nicholson.
On your left.
First Vice Chair O'Keefe.
On your right.
Director Pagliari.
President.
Director Risha.
On your video screen.
And Second Vice Chair Whitmore.
On your other left.
We love to hear it, folks. I see 15 in attendance and 0 absent. Before I'd like to recognize tonight's retirees, I would like to ask Director Chandler to read the board statement of employee appreciation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Regional Transportation District Board of Directors recognizes that RTD's dedicated workforce is the lifeblood of the agency. Every day, RTD employees do extraordinary things to make lives better through connection. We honor their work of delivering transit excellence, service, and value to the community, especially demonstrated during difficult and stressful moments. May the actions taken by the Board of Directors demonstrate our profound gratitude, commitment, and support toward all RTD employees.
Thank you very much, Director. I would now like to read the name of the employees who have retired since January or will be retiring by the end of the month. Curtis Blake, Light Rail Field Supervisor, 25 years. Joe R. Henderson, Supervisor, Overhead Conveyor System, 28 years. Unfortunately, neither of our retirees were unable to attend tonight's meeting, but I would like to thank them again for all their hard work and dedicated service over these many decades. Further, you may see that Officer Doug McLeod was set to be recognized tonight as a retiree. Doug has asked that he come back down the line to be recognized, as his official last day as an employee has not yet come. We look forward to recognizing Doug in the months to come. With that, please join me in recognizing our retirees, Curtis Blake and Joe Henderson. Thank you both for your service. Next is our public participation period, which is open to anyone who would like to address the board. As we have both in-person and remote attendees, in-person comments will go first, followed by those who are participating remotely. For those attending in person, please come up to the podium when your name is called. If you have not already signed up to speak and like to do so, please approach the podium when called for additional speakers. For those attending virtually, if you wish to speak and have not already done so, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. Staff will unmute you when it is your turn to speak if you're dialed in. Press *6 to toggle your mute settings. Please bear in mind that participating in this process, you will be recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, then your comments will have to be submitted via writing. If any speaker has documentation or reference materials for the board, or if any member of the public would like to submit written comments, please email those materials to the board office at rtd.directors@rtd-denver.com. During this time, the board will not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you'd like to be contacted regarding your public comment, please email the RTD board office at rtd.directors@rtd-denver.com. Speakers should begin their remarks by stating their names and will have up to 3 minutes to provide those comments. Looks like our first speaker tonight is Jessica Beecham.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry, that mic is a little hot. The National Federation of the Blind knows that blindness is not the characteristic that defines us or our future, and that when we have the proper tools and training, that we can live the lives we want. For those of us in the Denver metro area, for many of the members of the National Federation of the Blind of Colorado, access on demand has become a critical piece of having the tools in our tool belt to be able to fully participate as active citizens in this beautiful state of Colorado. We are really pleased that we've had some more correspondence and conversation with staff of RTD. But what we haven't had is a real opportunity to sit down with RTD staff, with members of the board, with a collective group of people who have the ability to make change and to help to develop the Access on Demand program into a program that can be sustainable and to provide the services that we need in a way that's really collective and participatory. This is something that we as an organization would really like to see. Our organization is categorically opposed to service cuts, and so we recognize that cutting the number of rides significantly, cutting the service area back to the service area that's offered by the accessoride service and cutting the times of service is going to have a significant and drastic impact on our members. And what we would like to do is think about creative ways that we can keep this program, the Access on Demand program that has helped so many of our members, particularly those members with multiple disabilities or those members who maybe don't have the orientation and mobility skills at their fingertips to use the fixed route transit system to be able to fully participate as active, as employed, as tax paying, as contributing to the economy citizens in Colorado. I would like to thank our board of directors for being very thoughtful in their deliberation about changes to Access on Demand. And I'd like to thank the staff for taking some extra time. But I really think that the piece that's missing is real collaboration and a real idea that we can build a program that doesn't take anything away from anybody, that helps to continue to build out the public transit system that we love and depend on here in Colorado. So thank you for your time and have a great meeting.
Thank you very much for your comments, Jessica. I have next on our list, Fitz Stone.
Good afternoon. My name is Fitz Stone. I am the residential manager for the student housing at the Colorado Center for the Blind. And the Access on Demand program has been crucial in me being able to perform my job, being able to repair and do the things the students need me to do to keep them happy in their little apartments. Quickly, because sometimes taking public transit or even the paratransit system isn't going to be fast enough when I need to get to a Home Depot or somewhere to get what I need to fix things. So, I just would like to thank you for starting the program, and I'd hate to see it diminished in any way. So that's all I got. Thank you so much for your time and your service.
Thank you for your comments, Fitz. Next speaker is Maureen Neatfeld. Apologies for mispronunciation.
Hello, everyone. I'll back up, sorry. My name is Maureen Neatfeld, and I am Director of Student Services at the Colorado Center for the Blind. I'm also a second vice president of the National Federation of the Blind and president of our Denver chapter. I do want to reiterate the importance of access on demand and how critical it has been for many of us to live the lives that we want to live. I am a person with multiple disabilities. I am employed full-time. I'm a parent of a 6-year-old and a volunteer for my community. And this is the service that I use to be able to do all of these things. I do want to mention that none of us want to see a reduction in the amount of rides and also a reduction in our service area. And also want to bring up that we feel it is really important that we actually have real data to work from, real numbers of what cuts are, how are cuts going to actually save money, and how are we going to be able to move forward to create a sustainable program, not just make cuts and hope that next year we aren't all here again facing the same problem. So we really hope for thoughtful collaboration moving forward, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Maureen. Our next speaker is Erin Daly.
Hello. So my name is Erin Daly. I live in Englewood, Colorado, and I have an access on demand user. And this is such an important service. And not only is it so important, it works. And I think we have said that again and again, that this service, it really does what I think RTD's mission is, which is to connect people. And this is connecting us with jobs. There's people here who would not have jobs if they did not have this. And I know that there has been a communication that has gone out that said that, AOD should not be used for jobs, but I would ask any person in this room to use the paratransit system to get to their job, because first you're going to get there early or late because your pickup time is what's on time, but what's the drop-off time? Are you going to get there? I've gotten there early for appointments, and I sometimes for my pickup, I've had to wait an hour and a half. And as someone who is working and full-time and a grad student, there's plenty of things I could be doing with my time besides sitting at my job when I'm not getting paid to be there. And it is not a pleasant experience to do that. I definitely think that the 60 rides, we should be kept, because that is essential. The people that are using those 60 rides are using it because they need it for their job and oftentimes for their children. I am not one of the people here who has children, but there are people here who have children that would not be able to take their kids to childcare, to do like anyone in this room could do when their kid is sick from school and they have to go get them. This is just such a huge lifeline for that as well. And I definitely think that, we've been talking about a base fare. I think that that's fair with the paratransit, me personally, with, there being equality between that. So I definitely think that that's a possibility if we're looking at, fiscal financial things that we can do, especially if we have the live that we can have for people who have less means. I think that that's great for that. I do think it's important, though, that we realize that multi-stops are something that we should also be reconsidering. I know one of the things that is being discussed with AOD on demand and also with multi-stops is equity, and that this service is not available to every single person who can use the paratransit system. But I would encourage you to realize that equity is not about taking away rights, it's about adding to them. we will never be able to be equal, anyone in here, for so many various reasons. But for instance, those of us in here who are blind cannot use self-checkouts at King Soopers. We're not going to King Soopers and asking them to remove the self-checkouts. We're asking to be able to use them. When it was available on the buses to be able to see where the stop you were going was, we didn't demand that to be taken away. We have audio cues that tell us what the stops are now. Equity is about being able to add and make everything equal. And by removing this service, we are not achieving equity. We are just moving further away from the goalpost. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Aaron. Our next speaker is Dan Holvinka. Apologies for any mispronunciation.
Thank you all for being here, and thanks for having us, giving us the time to say something. So first and foremost, I am a father. I am a son to a sick father. I get real emotional about all of this because really this program has like given me my ability to move around my world independently. And that is such a huge, huge thing. And I don't know if until anyone sitting around the table in front of me has really understood what it feels like to have your independence taken away from you, or feel that kind of loss, and then like have a sliver of it given back to you, and then like have to be here to argue against like how like these are real foundations to help all of us get to what we need to get to. I work at the center as well. I'm a full-time student in the fall, getting a master's program. Like I said, I caretake for my sick father. I need to get places to get his medications and to his appointments. I have twins that are 1.5 years, and though I don't use my 60 now, I promise I'm going to. That is without a doubt, I'm going to. So to hear that the bone you're throwing me is you're gonna cut mine in half and give me an extra $5 I live in West Arvada. It took me over an hour to get here with your service that I'm so grateful for. I'm so grateful for it. And to get to Littleton, sometimes just to make it affordable, like I have to hopscotch to those places. So the thought of like having that number cut in half is like, that means I have to go to work to get to work that day. And I mean, I'll do it because I love my job. But I mean, when I came on this program, it was such a breath of fresh air that, you know, part of my day working only went to getting myself there and home. So, I mean, please heed this call of working with us collaboratively. We want to come up with gainful solutions for both sides. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Dan. Our next speaker is Marianne Miglarelli.
Good evening. My name is Marianne Migliarelli. I am from Boulder. Uno wants to have his say. Regional Transportation District is all about traveling. And I want to encourage you to travel with me very briefly to your favorite grocery store. And in that grocery store, there are many, many products, some of which are cookies. Some of them are in bags and boxes and they're sitting on the shelf. And others are fresh baked. Imagine being at the bakery counter and the baker comes to you and says, here is a fresh baked chocolate chip cookie right out of the oven. If you would take that cookie, say aye. Aye. If you would not, I understand the reticence. But For us, Access on Demand is that fresh baked chocolate chip cookie. You can get it when you need it. You can use it effectively. There are some limits, but they are not extreme. The opposite, Accessoride, is that store-bought cookie. It is still there. It is very valid, and it can be really scrumptious, but it's not ever going to be the same as the cookie fresh out of the oven. That is one thing to realize. The other thing to realize is that right now, that Accessoride cookie costs $4.50 or maybe $2.25 if you're on the affordability budget program for Accessoride and RTD. But right now, that fresh baked chocolate chip cookie is being handed with no cost until you reach your $25 maximum. So why wouldn't people want that cookie? To be perfectly honest. But when we talk about Access on Demand, and I've heard so many people say it's not equitable. For one thing, it's free. For another thing, the stops, the multi-stop option was there. For another thing, we can use it 24 hours a day and the service area is pretty large. Equity in this instance is not to cut service hours to add cost, though many of these things we could certainly look at in collaboration. We've been having these comment sections, and while I am perfectly happy to spend my time, effort, and energy to come down here to have a comment, and I know that you will listen carefully to the things I say and to the same things that my colleagues say.
Mary Ann, if you could wrap up your comments.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
We are looking for collaboration, and we are looking to make sure that Access on Demand is the high bar and that Accessoride rises to meet it, not reducing to lower a standard. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Mary Ann. Our next speaker is Ian Miller.
Good afternoon, RTD Board. Thank you all so much for allowing me to speak with you today. I want to speak to you all about a slightly separate subject than the previous batch. Although I do want to say that cutting service and reducing our ridership at this time in any of our programs should not be an acceptable measure of cost cutting, given that our ridership numbers for the last few years have been stagnating despite several peer institutions and several peer systems getting back to pre-COVID levels. I want to talk to you very briefly today about the Front Range Passenger Rail and the importance of the success of that project. We are currently facing severe budget cuts, both from the federal level and across the board here in Colorado. We're looking at about anywhere from a $700 million to $2 billion deficit in the next year. That depends entirely on the federal side. However, we cannot allow these budgetary concerns to limit our ability to impose and explore and expand our transit programs. If we allow these budget cuts to hinder our ability to find creative solutions to continue to support these programs, we are going to see the end of transit as we know it. My family lives up in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, which for those of you who don't know is about a 4-hour drive from here, give or take. The Front Range Passenger Rail could cut that in half by taking me up to Fort Collins, where I could rent a car thereafter to get the other half of the way up there. That like ideal of rail eventually reaching up to Cheyenne, these are human rights, the human right to travel without a car. We are currently looking at a car industry that is paving over our city. An expansion to Pena Boulevard, for example, is a program we should be attacking and fighting rigorously to make sure that that money comes here to protect our programs of such significance and importance, both to our communities of the blind, to our peer communities here in the city, our impoverished community, folks who can't afford to have a car. This should be a city that is capable of walkability, capable of a plaid infrastructure, capable of that walkability. And I am concerned that I've seen several board members fail to meet that fight, fail to reach at this moment to engage on these levels, to fight creatively, to find solutions. Instead, we're attacking our blind community. Instead, we're attacking ridership options. Instead, we're thinking about cuts that could affect ridership. We have the resources to improve our ridership. Plans have been proposed to improve ridership, but if the Front Range Passenger Rail project fails, we are unable to find this moment, to fight in this moment to make sure that these programs are successful, we could see an inability for us to get tax increases in the next few years. Because when we come to the voters, what are they going to say? They're going to say we failed them at every single turn. It is extremely important that rather than cutting at programs that provide ridership, we find creative solutions. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Ian. Our next speaker is Nate Trela.
Hello, my name is, that is a little live. My name is Nate Trela from Englewood, Colorado. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to the board today. We've been closing in on almost 1.5 years now that can't believe it's been that long. It's getting that long about access on demand and the improvements that can be made to make it both sustainable while still retaining the utility of it. Through that time, I've been up here quite a few times to talk about the multi-stop trips that used to be possible when using Uber on the system. For some of you, you've heard me talk about this for 1.5 years. With half the board being new, I think it's worth revisiting this question because it was a possibility, a tool that made it possible to do so much more efficiently, cost efficiently, time efficiently. You know, when I go take my daughter to school and come back to go to work, you know, you're spending $20 for me to do something that could be done with $11 or $12 round trip. Financially, it doesn't work out. The refrain repeatedly has been it's a matter of equity, that you can't do that with a wheelchair accessible vehicles and multi-stop trips. Mary Ann before made a very good point that, or I'm sorry, Aaron before made a very good point that the question should be maybe we should elevate the standard of what we can provide, what the district can provide on the core accessible ride service. And it looks like you're taking steps of that with the change of the vehicle mix and the pilots that have been kind of hinted at. But this needs to be part of the discussion that we're having. You know, I appreciate the fact that RTD has taken the time to, and slowing down the process of evaluating what the best structure is going to be for access on demand. And it should be a holistic look that includes all of paratransit. And it should be done again as a, in partnership and in better communication with your stakeholders, with your passengers. We've been talking at each other for a lot of this time. And lately we've been talking with each other more, and that's where we're actually seeing progress. We're seeing engagement. We can work together and find a way to, again, maintain the system's usefulness and make it more sustainable financially. But there's more transparency that needs to be there into the data. You know, I do feel like circling back up to the multi-stop trip question as well. When the equity question, yes, you cannot hop on and hop off a wheelchair accessible vehicle, but with the core fixed route service, you can, if you buy a 3-hour pass. That seems like there's a question if equity doesn't work when or it seems to be a question about what you can do with access on demand versus access a ride, then maybe there should be a question too about what you do with fixed route versus access on, versus any of the paratransit systems. It seems like you should be raising the standard for everybody instead of cutting it back. But I, again, appreciate the improving dialogue and look forward to hearing how the system will be stronger and sustainable. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments, Nate. Our next speaker is Jason Bailey.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it very much. I would like to talk about priorities on how do we spend our money. I think we should have more door-to-door service. I would not want to take a ride from anyone who needs a ride, more access on demand. And we should spend less money on large cement structures costing billions of dollars that benefit contractors and banks, and spend more money on the people. We should have more door-to-door service and give less money to Chase Bank and all the other banks for interest on all your debts. cut off the debt, cut off the banks. You gave what, 10% of all your expense last year to the banks? That's like throwing the money into a trash can. You can't spend that on the people if you're giving it to the banks. I think we need more door-to-door service and fewer enormous buses that are mostly empty, wasting hundreds of millions of dollars, polluting the environment and backing up tens of thousands of cars every single day. More door-to-door service. Technology has changed transportation as it always does. Anyone over 20 remembers just a few years back when there were thousands of taxi cabs on the road. Of course, the internet and the connectivity provided by the internet did away with most of the taxi cabs. The internet and the connectivity provided by the internet has dramatically changed mass transit forever. Uber and Lyft are a couple of the more obvious reasons as to why so many enormous RTD buses are mostly empty, and there are so many other categories of internet connectivity that have changed mass transit forever. Another reason as to why so many enormous buses are mostly empty is Zoom, such as in this room, and another 1,000 applications that make working together from home and other remote locations more possible than ever before. Much of the bus traffic from home to work and back to home has gone away forever because of the internet's connectivity. We could talk about Amazon and Walmart and online sales. We could talk about DoorDash and all the other delivery services. But what I'd like to talk about for my last minute here is your financial report. This 300-page document, if you open a PDF or a Microsoft Word and you on your keyboard hit Control F, F means find, hit Control F, a menu will pop up and you type in a word and you hit search. You know what word is not in your financial report? Internet. You do not have the word internet in your financial report. You talk about risk factors pertaining to RTD and your financial condition, but you do not mention the word internet, which has completely changed your entire organization. This financial report, completely fraudulent. I don't care how many auditors you talk about. I don't care about how much you think your financial report is such high standards. It's completely fraudulent. The word internet is not in your financial report. I could talk another hour about it, but my time's up. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Our next speaker is Cody Bear or Cody Barr.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. I'm Cody Bear, a blind CPA and accessorized user. Also serve as the treasurer of the National Federation of the Blind of Colorado. And I'm proud to stand here with my friends from this organization that categorically opposes service cuts to RTD transit services. I will say I concur with what's been said by this group, but want to approach a couple of other topics that we've yet to bring up with regards to accessorized. The first of those is the limitations around the 3/4 mile rule and hours, as previously discussed. I do oppose that, but want to consider the worst case scenario that we implement those. It would cause significant administrative headaches for RTD to enforce. There has been suggested that geofencing is possible, but it has also been suggested that the hours rule is not possible. I can imagine there's 15 of you guys on this board right now, and imagine how many of you guys know what hours the bus runs at every place that you're going to. I would suggest that very few do, if any, and imagine having that burden to prove being placed on the customer. I think, when we look at the multi-stop issue, it was a nightmare from an administrative perspective, people being suspended because they were allowed to do it. And I would offer that likely RTD spent more cost in administrative time enforcing it than if they would have just allowed multi-stops to continue. Second of all, I want to hit on the arbitrary rule of the 3-month wait period for access on demand users. I myself work in a project-based job and don't always have a set time of when I need to be at work or leave work. So it makes it impossible to, plan Access-a-Ride out 2 days or a day or even a week in advance. I think, that I don't see how we can put a limitation like that when for some people Access-a-Ride just doesn't work as is. And again, it's a completely arbitrary, and how would we determine after 3 months as to whether somebody is allowed to use the on-demand services or not? I hope the board will consider these questions that I posed in the upcoming month, and I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Our next speaker is Eileen Gallegos.
Hello, I'm Eileen Gallegos, and thank you for having me speak today. I really want to talk about dignity and confidence. I am a native of Colorado. I have 3 children and 7 grandchildren, and I am very grateful for RTD as a whole. Before Access-a-Ride came around, I took the bus everywhere with my children. Sometimes I had to take 3 buses to get them to daycare. So I would have to get up at like 3, 4 in the morning to get my children to school, or to daycare, whichever it would be. Anyway, long story short, I just want to get to how happy I was when Access-a-Ride came around and I was able to get picked up door to door, and especially for job interviews, not being lost. There were times that I went the wrong direction and ended up an hour late for interviews and therefore not getting the job. And then we'll just keep going on. So when on-demand came about, and this is where more confidence and my dignity was just flowing over, because I could go to recreation, I could go to bowling, and I didn't have to leave bowling if I wasn't ready to with demand and the on-demand program. So when my children live outside of the service area, and I cannot tell you how heartbreaking it's going to be if I just can't come to see them when I want to see them. Also, the one stop, the adding one stop was very helpful in leaving from work to go pick up groceries and not having to deal with Instacart, which sometimes you can get lettuce that shouldn't even be at a food bank. And when you go to pick up your groceries, someone in the store gets those for you, and it's just done with a lot more care. Anyway, thank you for considering my thoughts, and I hope that we can work together to make this keep going.
Thank you for your comments, Eileen. Our next speaker is Miller Hudson.
Good evening. I came this evening just to speak very briefly and encourage the adoption of the Cora fee waiver motion that you have in front of you this evening. I have 2 things to say about it. One is it is an opportunity for RTD to set a good example, particularly at a time when we have a legislature who seems to keep trying to limit access to information about the legislative process. And I don't need to remind you that they continue to look for a path to undermine the democratic process here at RTD. One of the things I've done in retirement is I write a weekly column for Colorado Politics. And I've become familiar with a lot of the press, which is no longer driven by our major newspapers or our major channels. They don't have the resources any longer to have investigative staffs or long investigative processes. And so often the most important stories are broken by freelancers, someone like myself who might be very curious about a particular issue. But I can guarantee you this, the pay for what column doesn't cover more than maybe 1 or 2 hours of investigation. So it would be a tremendous assistance to someone who works for a blog or who's writing for an independent newsletter to have this kind of a provision. And so I think it's a good idea. I think it serves the public interest, and I hope you'll give it serious consideration and endorse it tonight. Any organization that is doing what it's supposed to do has nothing to fear from investigation or someone looking at their records. And when you have an organization that isn't doing that, right now, the only way it makes its way into the public notice is from a tip. And I'm willing to bet, I'm not a betting person, but I would bet money that the story about the mayor's office on Channel 4, CBS station, using Signal to erase their email trace, I'll bet you that was a tip that they got from someone who knew what was happening. So I would hope that you would look at this as a good government move. And as I said, it's a good way to set an example. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. I will now turn to Mr. Kroll in regards to, has anyone raised their virtual hand?
Chair Bouquet, we have several present who have raised their hand. It looks like we've got around 8 to 10. The first of whom is Tim Keenan.
Tim, you're recognized.
Hi there. I'm Tim Keenan. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to address you. First and foremost, I just wanted to, this peer review was taken because ridership in Access on Demand was exploding. Staff was like, whoa, this is getting expensive. We need to take a look at this program. But now it seems like we're kind of plateauing. We got $15 million. $15 million was the funding request for this year. That is 1.13% of RTD's budget. So I would just ask you to consider whether this is in fact unsustainable going forward, even if it creeps up to 1.5 or closer to 2%. This is a very well-used program that has enabled people to build lives and livelihoods that would not have been possible without it. It's a very efficient program. It's about $16 per trip versus buses, I understand, are $19 per passenger subsidy, and Access-a-Ride is way up there at $60 to $80 per passenger. So I would think that you would want to push more people toward Access on Demand rather than any other options if they're able to utilize it. As far as I'm concerned, this past November, I started working at Amazon out in Green Valley Ranch, and I live at First and Broadway here. And I've been working overnight. So it's just this, I would not be able to use Access on Demand to get to work if these recommendations are adopted. And it's about $30 a trip. So that would take a huge bite out of my weekly paycheck. I go 4 times a week. So even with 40 rides, I would be, I would still have a little bit left over. But if somebody is going to work full time and they're like me and their schedules can change because Amazon can flex me up or down an hour at the end of my shift, so I can't use Access-a-Ride. For these people, they would have nothing left if you do 40 rides a month. That's just unacceptable. So let me just check my points here. I think I had one other thing. Actually, I've pretty much covered everything. You know, the fare seems fair. Although I would submit that you might want to zero out the fare for people on, you know, who qualify for the LIVE program, because, you know, there are people that have really, really tight budgets, and even 225, if they do it several times a month, is gonna, you know, be significant expense for them. And so overall, I would just urge you to reconsider, you know, whether this in fact a sustainable program. It's
Tim, if you could wrap up your comments.
Sure, it furthers RTD's mission across the board of bringing more people, more places. So I hope you consider that going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Mr. Kroll, our next speaker.
Yes, next we had David Sabatos.
David, you're recognized.
Good evening. Not sure if I can turn my camera on, but my name is Dave Sabatos. I wear a few different hats, but I'm here today as a resident of RTD District C and as a mostly former journalist, and not on behalf of any organization. I'm asking for your support for the proposal to waive some Quora fees for journalists. Besides a few guys like Miller, journalists are pretty bad advocates for themselves because of the role they play in society. So I wanted to speak as someone who'd been in their shoes in the past. When I was running 2 community newspapers in Denver, deciding whether or not to file a Quora request was always a real question. Most government agencies responded professionally and with courtesy. A few attempted to claim thousands of dollars in costs for almost any request. Other entities, not RTD to be clear, that sometimes tried to throw up financial roadblocks might have thought they could avoid a story. But in reality, those games just make journalists figure there's something being hidden, even if there isn't. I think everyone knows that media is struggling in this country, and even modest fees can be a barrier to local publications doing their work. Student journalists certainly can't afford additional costs. In many cases, Quora requests aren't looking for bad information. They're looking for complete information so a journalist can do their research. Roadblocks to Quora requests don't stop stories, but they can make them less accurate and cause unneeded antagonism between communications staff and the media, which ultimately harms the agency when trying to work with the media on positive, proactive stories as well. The overall cost of this proposal to RTD is minuscule, but waiving a few $100s in fees means a small outlet like those I ran might be able to hire an additional freelancer to write extra articles about RTD or other government agencies. This proposal really does help local media, who in turn are trying to bring quality, accurate information to the public. It would also set an incredible example to other government agencies to follow, showing our state that RTD is a leader in transparency as well as transportation. Thank you for your time, and I encourage you to vote yes on this meaningful proposal. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, David. Mr. Kroll, our next speaker.
Yes, next we have Ian Santo Pietro.
Ian, you're recognized.
Ian, if you are attempting to speak at this time, we cannot hear any of your audio.
Might be appropriate to go to our next speaker.
Yes, Mr. Santo Pietro, we were going to move on to our next speaker, and we'll circle back to you down the line here once you've maybe had a chance to sort your audio issues. Next up, we have Chaz Davis.
Chaz, you're recognized.
All right, good evening, everyone. I am Chaz Davis. I'm a father of 2. I am blind, and I do have multiple disabilities as well. Like many of the citizens here today, I have come up and spoken quite a few times on Access on Demand. So a few years ago, RTD came together and created a service that really allowed for so many of us with disabilities to be more free and more able to move about our community, to engage in our community, to go to work, to be able to have our kids in daycare so that we can go to work, it has opened our lives to places that we previously hadn't been able to do or hadn't been able to do reliably. And so we saw a huge increase in ridership, at least using that AOD. And that's because it's reliable. It's something that works. It's something that we can use, and it's consistently there for us. I firmly believe that we should be buoying the expectations of people with disabilities rather than making going to work or keeping our kids in daycare cost prohibitive. So I just look at access on demand as something that we really need to maintain. And even if it causes us to look at the budget and say, okay, well, this is increasing because this is something that is working for so many people, then maybe that's a consideration we have to look at, and we have to be more creative in our cost saving measures. And obviously we can say, let's cut the rides in half. That's going to save money overall, but maybe we can look at it in a more creative way, and we can all come to the table and have a solution that's viable for everyone. Because I've spoken to many people on the board, staff members. This is not a service that we want to get rid of. This is something we want to maintain, but we know it needs to be sustainable. All right, thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Chaz. Mr. Cohen.
So, Chair McKay, we received notice from those online that they're having a hard time hearing us. So we're going to need to, if it's okay with you, pause and restart the Zoom. And that way we can ensure those participating remotely are able to fully hear what's going on.
Excellent. So in person, folks now. So we'll wait for the webinar.
Okay, we believe our audio issues may have been addressed here. We are going to now move on to the next speaker in the queue, which is James Triplett.
James, are recognized.
Hold the audio now unmuted. Zoom webinar.
Can you all hear me?
Looks like you're done talking, so we'll lower your hand.
No, I'm not done. I'm not done. Whoever's speaking, it's very scratchy.
Hand now lowered.
No, don't.
James. Press Alt to show or IF. Alt Y, hand now raised. Looks like you're done talking, so we'll lower your hand to 8 seconds.
Can you all hear me?
James, you may proceed.
Hand now lowered.
Your voice is very scratchy. I can barely understand you. Can you hear me?
Yes, James.
Okay, I'm Joe Triplett. I'm a citizen of Englewood, Colorado. I do agree on what everybody's talking about, access on demand, but we must remember it was originally given to the access ride as something to assist, so those who can ride access on demand can leave Access-A-Ride and ride it. I know there's been quite a bit of criticism about Access-A-Ride, but I can't use access on demand for many reasons. I am totally blind. I've had several jobs here in Denver in the past. I'm 77 years young, and I've been able to get to and from work with very little problem. Yes, like in life, we got always plan, things we do, including transportation. I would like to make 3 recommendations. Number one, I'd like to see the access on demand budget taken away from the Access-A-Ride. The reason for that is if they have their own budget, then that way improvements could be made on Access-A-Ride. Right now, we have had one improvement on Access-A-Ride for over 21 years concerning the passengers. Number two, I would like to see them, in other words, I'd like to see them don't let them qualify for accessory ride, but they could qualify for direct access on demand only. That would improve service on accessory ride, including making it more efficient. Less people who cannot ride accessory ride because, you know, an accessory will have multiple disabilities as well as blindness. That would help. And I would like to see the board do the same consideration and spend as much time working with all of us who are on accessory ride who want to see this service improved. I do thank the board for all their hard work. I know this is not an easy job. I know decisions are not made just making them. I know there's a lot of thought and a lot of time put into it. But, you know, after this is over with access on demand, please let some of us who are accessory ride users basically only, let's get together and let's show how and make improvements for people who have to ride accessory ride because they're not, because of their disability or other reasons they just cannot ride access on demand. Again, access on demand is a great service. It is, it's just like, you know, being cited as far as transportation. You can get a car anytime, day or night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Where accessory rides you can't. I mean, I appreciate and I'm so glad we have accessory ride. So let's work out ways to improve it, like dropping the time between the times we stop. Like if I go to the bank just for 5 minutes, I have to wait an hour. Let's consider dropping that to 30 minutes or a little bit less. I know there are improvements, so I'd like to ask the board to please, let's spend some time together. I'm more than willing to volunteer and work on any committee that the board has, you know, and concerning accessory rides. So let's get the accessory ride users together and you know, and let's make some improvements. I really appreciate your time and thank you so much for allowing me to speak tonight. May everybody have a very blessed and great week. Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening. Hi, my name is Derek Solbo. I live in downtown Denver. Firstly, a thank you to Denver Regional Transport and as well as all of the board of directors who spend a lot of their time working on these issues. I have one issue here that I really feel needs to be addressed. Let me first tell you where I'm coming from. I founded a business many years ago, and I started it with near no money, and it was a seminar and training business. And I grew it into a somewhat successful business over many years. It grew and grew and grew. And the reason it grew is because I understood what was going on for my customers. I understood what my customers were getting or not getting, depending on the instructor's abilities when they were doing a course. So I sat through a million different classes, to understand what was going on. And I grew the business simply because I understood all the problems. Where am I going with this? I feel that probably all of the board members, but maybe one or two or three, don't have any conception of what it's like to be blind, nor do they have any conception of what it is like to be dealing with these transport issues that everybody has addressed so far. In order to really understand, you have to do what I did by sitting in on the classes and determining what exactly was going on so I could make valid decisions related to each instructor. What you need to do, if I may suggest, would be to use both services for a week. 1 week access on demand and 1 week the regular access to do everything from going to work to going shopping, etc., etc. At the end of a week, you'll be able to understand far better what we're dealing with. Because right now you're sitting on your seats and looking at us and going, oh, poor people. No, we're not poor people. We're people with disabilities. I only went blind about 8 years ago, and I've done a lot in my life. And I continue to want to do things in my life. But you guys, if you pull this away from us, are really taking away from my and many other people's ability to do things effectively. So I would ask you, please have the courage, and I'll even say the guts, to live like a blind person in terms of put a blindfold on and for a week, go with your families, go to the supermarket and see what it's like. Get on one of the access bus rides and be dropped off at a curb and try to find your way to the front door or where you need to be. Only then are you able to understand enough to make valid decisions. And my final point is I have a question, and it's a theoretical question, but I will pose it. I feel that the access system is being protected to the detriment of its customers, being us people that use it. What I mean, I think that
Mr. Chair, we can't hear you.
Hi, this is Annie Heat. Is it my turn to speak?
Hi, Dave had to reset the sound within that room, so they'll call on you in a moment.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Well, I mean, you'd be surprised how important the accent Well, I mean, could we have fit any more people? Like, it seemed like not like.
You want me to test? Mike, can you hear? Mike Smith, can you hear?
Yes, I can hear just fine now.
Okay, Mike Smith says he can hear.
Can we have Chair test his mic as well?
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. How am I coming through?
Clear as a bell. Sounds really good.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you, Mike. Folks, we're going to get started in 1 minute. 1 minute. Just fishing in the dark. All right, folks, we are getting started. Please take a seat and we'll be moving forward. Our next speaker in the queue. Our next speaker in the queue is who, Mr. Kroll?
Anahit Labar.
Anahit, you're recognized. Apologies for mispronunciation.
No, you did not. It's all good. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. And I wanted to share a couple of things. Number one, I would like to thank the Board of Directors for consideration of this issue. I wanted to share that we have had multiple opportunities to share our thoughts and share our feedback, share our personal experiences, which has been incredible. I am curious to see how this information is processed and presented by the board, because the sessions that we have had was mainly us sharing our personal feedback. And not a lot of concrete data has been shared as to what the numbers are, what exactly the participation is, and how it all can relate. We are here to assist and to support the cause and to see how we can be of assistance in improving the access on demand services. I am a teacher. I am blind myself. I am a deaf-blind individual. I am a teacher of students who are blind and low vision. And my job has a little bit of a different nature. I go to different schools each day. I start at different schools each day, and that can change the morning of my job. So having Access-a-Ride is not necessarily a feasible option for me. I think there is an elephant in the room, and we're not necessarily speaking about this, in that services has been drastically reduced since COVID, and very few of them are either restored to their original frequency or route. I live in Centennial. The only bus that only goes east and west that we have has been reduced. The route has been reduced, and so has the frequency, neither of which have been restored. It is impossible for me to get to work in a reliable way using public transportation. I would love for you to note, for all of you to note that as blind, deafblind individuals with multiple disabilities, we want to participate in our country's economy. We want to participate in local economy. We want to be working, paying taxes. And so I would really encourage RTD to look at this holistically and from creative point of view. RTD can very well become national leader in coming up with a solution that can be viable if we find a way to raise revenue. I know I have been personally on multiple committees with RTD throughout the years, just because I am very passionate about transportation. And so there's so many things that we can address. How do we improve services so we increase ridership, so increase revenue? There's a lot, and I feel like we're addressing the one issue.
Wrap up your comments.
Yep,
Thank
you bet. The one issue that is easy to cut, the one issue that is easy to diminish. So anyway, I would really encourage everybody to have a creative, holistic approach to this. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker,
Jeff Roberts.
Jeff, you are recognized.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jeff Roberts. I'm Executive Director of the Colorado Freedom of Information Coalition, a nonpartisan group that promotes government transparency and helps journalists and the public understand and use Colorado's open government laws. CFOIC's Advocacy Committee has not taken a position on the proposed CORA and CCJRA fee waiver resolution, but generally, I want to thank the board for one, not raising its CORA fee rate to the statutory allowed maximum, like about 1,500 other government entities in Colorado have done, and two, recognizing that high fees can be and often are an obstacle to obtaining important information about how government operates and how public servants conduct themselves in their official capacities. In 2020, a CFOIC report concluded that CORA's fee provision can be used to make public records so cost prohibitive they effectively are off limits to the public. It got worse last July when the maximum research and retrieval rate jumped 23% because of an inflation factor built into the law. Even the state's largest media organizations don't have a lot of money to set aside for open records requests these days, but the smaller ones are especially vulnerable. As the Aurora Sentinel put it in an editorial earlier this month, exorbitant fees for public records put revealing government actions and meetings outside the realm of affordability at great cost to public accountability. CFOIC encourages you to interpret the pilot policy as broadly as possible to include bloggers and others who seek records in an effort to make sure the public is informed, and to grant fee waivers as often as possible to others who request records for a public purpose. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Jeff. Our next speaker.
Next is Andrea Brandeis.
Andrea, you're recognized.
Yes, my name is Andrea Brandeis, and I moved from Maryland to Colorado in August 2020, retiring from government service. And for me, as a retiree, instead of sitting home passively as a blind person, a blind retiree doing nothing, Access on Demand has enabled me to contribute in many ways to activities in my community, such as volunteer activities at my church, participating in Broomfield City Council meetings, participating in the local community center, and also just helping out with needs in my own house, getting groceries, going to doctor's appointments, instead of always thinking, oh, I have to ask someone to drive me. Because, for example, in Broomfield, there is some bus service if I could get to it. But if I was able to get to a bus, which is not really possible, it would take me 2 hours to get to Nativity Catholic Church, which is 5 minutes from my house. So Access on Demand has made it possible for me to live a full life as a contributing retiree. And I would like to use Access on Demand in order to participate in meetings um, perhaps in Denver to help to think of creative ways so that the program could be sustained. Because I realized after working in the Senate and in government that everyone has a budget. So this program is so important to so many people. It has to be, there must be ways that it can be sustained. And if anyone has any doubt about this, all you have to do is put your car in the garage for 1 week, don't use it, and then you could get an experience of what we as blind people have to deal with in terms of transportation. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you for your comments, Andrea. Next speaker.
Yes, we are now returning to Mr. Ian Santo Pietro.
Ian, can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me this time?
We can. You are recognized, sir.
Excellent, thank you. My name is Ian Santo Pietro. I live in District C and recently started taking an E-line to work for 3 to 4 days per week. And I'd like to express my appreciation for the new simplified fare structure and the lower fares. Since I was last a regular rider of RTD, it saves me a lot of money on my commute compared to driving. $88 monthly pass particularly bears a large responsibility for my attraction to and usage of RTD services. And I'd like to thank the board personally for working to implement those structures. I'm a little bit late, been around for a little while, but yeah. I'd also like to encourage the board to explore any additional means of increasing public transit affordability without reducing service, because it really does benefit all citizens of the entire metro area. You know, abled, disabled, everything. And thank you again for all of your work and for the time to speak. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you for your comments, Ian. Our next speaker.
At this time, Chair Bouquet, we have no further speakers in the queue.
Okay. I'd recognize anyone in the boardroom who would like to speak. If you would like to do so, please approach the podium at this time. Seeing none, I will close this section for public comment. Excuse me, were any emails, email comments received, Mr. Kroll?
Yes, Chair Bouquet, there were 5 emails to which you all received in regards to public comment for tonight's meeting. Mr. Sam Spare sent an anecdote on decreased ridership related to E-line. Kevin Bruton sent a comment related to training failures, specifically with respect to service animals. Mr. Cody Bates provided an email titled RTD Updates, in which he expressed some general disgruntlement with the board. GDT sent letter this afternoon regarding service planning standards and service performance reporting. The National Women's Soccer League expansion team and the Cora CCJRA resolution you all are considering this evening. And finally, Landon Hilliard sent a letter of commendation.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Kroll. So now at this time, I will close public participation. Tonight, we will have 3 external entity reports. The first will be from our Advisory Committee for People with Disabilities. Earl Lee is here to provide an update. Mr. Lee, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. On March 11th, we held a joint meeting with the APAC committee. During the portion with the ACPD, the ACPD is actually working on some planning groups. We have several different programs that we are plans that we are working on. We heard from 3 of them. One of those planning groups is working on resolution to work to change the name of Civic Center Station in honor of Reverend Wade Blank. We heard from Joe Beaver and Jamie Lewis, who seem to be very close to submitting a formal application to the board to make that very change. During that meeting, we took an informal show of hands, if you will, of everyone in the 2 groups, and we got an overwhelming show of hands in favor of that change. The second person that, the second group that we talked to was led by Curtis Chong, who talked a lot about the accessibility of electronic documents, especially with regards to RTD's compliance He is very close to that that particular subject. Has been monitored and is very involved in wanting to bring RTD up to full compliance to online accessibility to with their online documents. He has mentioned it several times. He is a blind person who has a great deal of experience and has offered to help quite a bit to help RTD convert those documents. Gabe Christie has committed to meet with him to help move that project forward. The other planning group that we discussed is one that includes Greg Martinez, Gabe Christie, and myself, and we are looking at a procedure for a more timely method of communications, both internally to RTD and externally to the public, to identify the barriers that impact people, especially those with disabilities. And part of that is we have drafted a new form that we think is going to be, it's going to simplify the reporting process, a little more detailed in some areas, a little simpler in other areas, and we think it can replace multiple confusing forms that currently reside on the website. We hope to have a working copy that we can actually present to the board later in the year, and hopefully we can get some resolution that will help them. That's pretty much the report on the meeting. I have a couple of what I feel are positive notes that I would like to end on. One, I would like to commend Gabe Christie. I assume that you're aware that he is working on an outreach program that he is calling Gabbing with Gabe and Gisa. Tomorrow, he is holding one of his Gabbing with Gabe and Gisa meetings at the community or at the Center for People with Disabilities in Boulder, where he and Gisa are meeting with people in the community, just people with disabilities in the community. I think it's an interesting program. He was only able to get one in last year. I hope to join him tomorrow in Boulder. So I think that will be a very interesting program. And I think that public outreach is very, very important. The other thing is we all too often hear on the news, RTD's name is usually not reported in a very positive manner. This morning on 9 News, 6 a.m., they brought a very positive, what I feel is a very positive piece, where they reported that year over year in February, that the reported crimes at RTD bus stations and rail, bus stops and rail stations are down nearly 50%. Reported crimes year over year. So I think that's a very positive thing. And so I would like to commend Acting Chief Martin Gano and the board for their support in expanding the RTD police force. I think that's all that I have for this evening, and I yield the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee, for your report. Are there any questions or comments from directors at this time for Mr. Lee? Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much for your report, sir. Yes, it was very, a good sign for us to get some good news this morning, and also been seeing a lot of social media praise for Gabbing with Gabe. So I'm glad to see that out there. Thank you for your report, sir. All right, next we'll hear from Julie Jennings, and that's going to be an update regarding the activities of the Access-a-Ride Paratransit Advisory Committee. Ms. Jennings, the floor is yours.
Good evening. This is a brief summary of the March 11th APEC meeting. After roll call, there were no public comments. Updates on Q-Ride web portal. Final testing was being conducted and expected to be ready for APEC volunteers to test in the next couple of weeks. APAC observation of reservations and dispatch feedback. In response to APAC September 23rd, 2023 feedback on improvements, APAC members observed and provided feedback on accessoride reservationists and dispatch. Multiple APAC members engaged, and overall the feedback was good. APAC volunteers then provided their personal feedback on customer service, reservations, and dispatch. The group discussed their concerns and suggestions. We had a discussion of the peer review and proposed revised RTD recommendations. Paul Hamilton, the RTD Senior Manager of Paratransit Services, provided a summary of the revised proposed RTD recommendations. The RTD Board Operations and Safety Committee will review these recommendations at their next meeting. Access on demand recommendations. These include fare, subsidy, trip cap, service area, service hours, enrollment, suspension, and waive vehicle incentivism. Information on potential savings was given. Accessoride recommendations. These include extending recertification, modifying on-time performance metrics to measure both pickup and drop-off, and developing a fleet procurement plan with modified fleet mix. Next steps in March, they will present a draft of proposed recommendations to the RTD Board Committee. April, they will request RTD Board approval, and May through August, implement approved changes. There were several suggestions in a discussion providing actual accessible PowerPoint slides to public participants. Also, a suggestion to not change the current ADA service area, since some have no other transit option available, and reduction could lead to loss of jobs or access to health care. Questions were asked about incentivizing the ride-share taxis providing access on demand service to use their own waves, and what happens after reaching the monthly ride cap and access on demand vendors' ability to know what is in and out of the service area. And that concludes the APAC portion of the joint meeting with ACPD.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jennings, for your report. Any comments or questions from directors? All right, well, excellent. Thank you, Ms. Jennings, for the report, and thank you for your time. Finally, last but not least, we'll be hearing from our new CAC co-chair, Eric Smith, to give us an update on the work that the Citizen Advisory Committee has been doing. Mr. Smith, the floor is yours.
Good evening. My name is Eric Smith, pronouns he, him, and his, and I am the newly elected co-chair of the CAC. So thank you guys for having me. I'm here to let you know about all the hard work that we have lately been working on since the last time the board has been updated. First, we have elected a new co-chair again, me. We've also onboarded new members for 2025, at least 8 out of 17. And let's see. Can you hear me now? We've provided input on Title VI program updates and the May 2025 proposed service changes and submitted comments through online portals. We have reviewed and have the following input on SB-161, the transit reform bill. We just wanted to let everyone know that first, there's a discrepancy between the projected transit usage in the year 2035 and lack of increased transit funding. We also noted that many in the legislature would not be likely they'd probably be pretty unhappy with the service cuts in the suburban areas or areas with less housing and job density to drive ridership in denser areas. Suggested revisions to the dashboard. Right now, we're looking at RTD's capital costs. We wanted that to be included in the dashboard. And then we are supportive of simplifying the EquiPass purchases. Also, realistically, a total redesign of all of RTD's apps and maybe possibly get them centrally located into one app. Right now, we have reviewed HB 25-129 transit worker assault funding and training, and we have the following input. There are several members who are unsure whether increasing offenders' penalties will effectively reduce harm against system operators. Not sure if that is deterrent enough. Consistently, we think that fare collection, not just on the A line, but on all rail lines and the commuter rail as well, could possibly act as a deterrent. And then we received a presentation on the proposed paratransit program modifications, and we have the following feedback. The agency could improve how users' needs are identified in order to tailor services more effectively, possibly using volunteer user surveys or other data collection tools like QR codes. We also believe in exploring integrating FlexRide with Access on Demand and Access a Ride to provide more flexibility for riders, as well as showing the cost. We've been noted that services being tied to proximity of fixed route bus services will likely limit access. I know there's a lot of BRT projects going on in the city, and we're pretty excited about some of them. And we have a broader input on the transit infrastructure, which is to say RTD, we understand is not the lead agency on some of these projects. We know RTD as a stakeholder should advocate for an incremental build process. A good example would be installation of transit priority signals at key intersections like Lincoln and 11th Avenue to improve transit service prior to completion of the planned BRT corridors. We've heard some great updates, and we got to know some from Directors Nicholson and Chandler at our February meeting. And so we included some of that in our February CAC work plan meeting. Right now, the draft includes input on route performance and cost policies to provide timely input to the work of operations, security, and the security committee to inform near-term service changes and long-term service planning and how. Review transit signal technologies and strategies to improve system efficiency. Also, we want a little bit more involvement with Director Nicholson's Welcoming Transit Working Group, a little bit more collaboration there, and the CAC destination-specific engagements, meaning that we would like to possibly take field trips with the focus, which are to be determined, but could include visiting parts of the district or parts of RTD's security office or just here at the headquarters. Finally, we have updated our membership bios on the CAC website, and I encourage all of you to review them. We do have an engaged, committed, and knowledgeable group of members, including myself, and you guys are more than welcome to join us at our next meeting, which is scheduled every second Tuesday of the month. So for April, it will be Thursday, April 10th at 3:30 via Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Do we have any questions or comments for Eric Smith? Yes, Director Banker.
I have two questions for actually for the three entities that gave a report. One, do we have an RTD staff person that works with these citizen volunteers? And then two, can we get a written report from the three groups so that we have something on paper? Because you've given us a lot of good suggestions, and it'd be nice to be able to have them, you know, on a piece of paper so that we can look at them and have discussions about them. Thank you.
So we do work with Mr. Kroll here. He's usually attending all of our meetings, so he does help us craft our agenda. At the end of the meetings, we do have a report basically outlined for everything that we've just gone over, and so we can have that submitted to the board.
Thank you for the question, Treasurer Banker. Ms. Johnson.
Yes, Chair Bouquet, Deborah Johnson, General Manager and CEO. And if I can address Director Banker's question for the other two entities relevant to the advisory committees for people with disabilities and the paratransit committee, there are staff liaisons appropriate to that as well. One out of the Office of Civil Rights, specifically the American with Disability Acts of 1990 office, and then the support personnel relative to folks that are using the paratransit entity that would be out of our paratransit offices, and the senior manager of that office supports as well.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And also thank you, Co-Chair Smith. Congratulations on the new position. And it's lovely to see. I think this is the first time, at least my time serving on the board, for a member of the CAC to be in person. So we greatly appreciate you making the journey down here. Thank you. All right, that will close up our external entities reports. We're going to move now to the Audit Committee report. Committee Chair Busick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Audit Committee met on March 13, 2025 at 2 p.m. and discussed two recommended actions: one, to adopt the internal audit charter; one, to adopt the proposed 2025-2026 internal audit plan. Both of those matters passed out of committee with unanimous support and appear on tonight's agenda under unanimous consent items B and C. Our next meeting will be in May of 2025, where we will hopefully be discussing the annual comprehensive financial report. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Committee Chair Busick. Committee Chair Guzman, would you like to share regarding the Finance and Planning Committee report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Guzman, District C. Finance and Planning met on March 11th, 2025. We did not have any recommended action at that meeting. We did, however, have several discussion items. They included finishing the Fast Tracks report, 2025 fiscal policy, 2024 actuals to budget review, and identifying comparable agencies for cost efficiency comparison. The next meeting of the Finance and Planning Committee will be Tuesday, April 8th at 5:30 p.m.
Thank you for your report. Co-Committee Chair Rusha or Co-Committee Chair Harwick, do you have anything to report from Operations, Safety, and Security?
I do. The Operations, Safety, and Security met on March 12th at 5:30, and the committee discussed several important items, some of which will be voted on tonight. Going through unanimous consent will be the service standards and performance reporting, which was brought by Director Pagliari, myself, and Director Rusha. Up for recommended actions will be Title VI Service Equity Analysis and the May 2025 service changes. We also had a robust discussion about paratransit program modifications, and we bid our esteemed Fred Worthen a happy movement to the southern state of Florida. And our next meeting will be Wednesday, April 9th, 2025 at 5:30 p.m.
Thank you very much, Co-Committee Chair. Moving on, we are going to go to Performance Committee. Committee Chair Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Guzman, District C. Performance Committee met March 3rd, 2025. We had the 2025 Performance Committee work plan, which is in tonight's information for this board meeting, and key organizational performance metrics meeting. It was the first of these types of meetings that we have held. It was a lot of information, and we have certainly taken the feedback that we need more time to focus on that. We had two distinct parts to this meeting. After that, we adjourned into an executive session for the first quarterly check-in with our general manager CEO, as agreed to in the current GM CEO contract amendment. We will not be doing those meetings at the same time going forward. We're going to separate those out for everybody. That way we can really do the deep dive and focus on that, and we can commit our time with the general manager and CEO to the discussion that needs to happen and use the length of that time. That meeting happens during the morning, and we did increase our time allotment to try and give ourselves a buffer, but it was not nearly enough time to engage properly. And so the feedback was, let's separate those out. There's one more calendar date that we'll have to look at in the future. I'll work with General Manager CEO Johnson and with my vice chair to ensure that we get those separated out in a timely manner and inform the board and the committee members of those changes for the work plan that was submitted to this board. Our next meeting will be April 7th, 2025 at 8:30 a.m. And we look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on, we're going to do the approval of board meeting minutes and committee reports. The board and committee minutes were included in the board packet. Director Guzman has already provided the board office with a few corrections. Are there any additional correction from the board for the minutes to be approved this evening? Yep. Unless there is objection to considering the minutes all at the same time, may I please have a motion to approve the minutes for the following meetings? February 25th, board meeting. March 3rd, performance committee. March 6th, executive committee. March 11th, finance and planning committee. March 12th, special board meeting. March 12th, operations, safety and security committee. March 13th, audit committee. March 20th, executive committee. All of these happened in the year of 2025.
So moved, Guzman.
Guzman is the mover. Do I have a second? Risha is the second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Okay, I will now call the vote for this motion. Are there any no votes on this action? Okay, seeing none, it will pass 15 yeas to 0 no's. We are actually going to take a 10-minute break for our CART representatives for them to get caught up, and we'll be back at 7:25.
I disposed of my pamphlet. I was like, I can't have that thing, and I finally got around to ordering a new one. Like, I was just like torture. I gotta show you something.
Yes.
You know,
Chris, let us know what you signed.
all of that debacle of the other night, yeah, is summed up if I can find this picture. My buddies. This one was one that hit me right in the head. Yeah, you know. It's his home. You know what I said? I said, he looks like the guy that's in the mascot costume with the head off. You know, I did not know that his depth of loyalty to this school, that he was a grad and his dad's up there, but Nico, that is a coach killer. Yeah. He has. Well, I got an article. 17 other Big Ten teams, and they're all, you're recruiting against Indiana and Michigan and Ohio State and Purdue and Illinois and Iowa and Nebraska. Like and now Oregon and now Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA. I mean, you're in the middle of the metropolitan city. Now, granted, Boulder's not far away from Denver, and Fort Collins is a little further away, but they're in the heart of Vikings, Wild. Yeah, no one cares. And I got an article from another guy they interviewed Patino at Albuquerque, you know, and he was there. And I thought it was going to be slam. It was very gracious, but he outlined some things. And I mean, I don't think he got fired up there. I think he left. It's brutal. With the supposed beauty of this pack coming, Nico, I think he's going to be regretting it. Well, it's kind of, I mean, he's got the personal connection, he's got the family up there and all that. But, yeah, you know, he's talked to Tim Miles about how that worked. Yeah, well, Tim might be our next one.
My daughter watches play. So she's like, I know. I'm weird. But yeah, she's like, so yeah. Something new. You're not like, you don't have to worry. You're not like yours. Also,
Just ordered steak or version 6. Thank you.
She's grabbing it from like he's right and then she's I'm gonna try it. Yeah.
Sitting in meetings with your son lately.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, is he covering for Sawyer?
No, he's just been in meetings because we've been talking about stuff on Colfax.
Yeah.
But it was funny. I was like, say hello to your father for me the other day. He got a good laugh
He
out
gets
of
a
it.
little bit of, I mean, poor kid, you know, it's not like there's a lot of that, but he definitely, the mayor's office, they're like,
yeah.
O'Keefe?
Oh yeah, that's what I did too. Because like I knew he worked, you know, for the council person, but I didn't.
Right.
And then he's sitting across from me. I was like, oh. I was like, hey.
No, he's loving it. I mean, Sawyer's it can be tough, but she is, when she focuses on issues,
Yeah.
usually she's in for the
Yeah.
topic. Like,
Yeah, no
she
doubt.
understands it.
Yeah.
And I was like, politicians can be tough.
Yeah.
And,
Especially city council members.
City council
I mean, that's a
members.
whole different breed.
But if they're focused on the right issues,
Yeah.
that's how you learn.
Yeah.
And so I think he's good.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm friend, Jolan Clark is like
Yeah.
a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
And so like I still see him out.
Yeah.
And I see his previous staffers like regularly, and they've all done super well for themselves.
Yeah, he was another one. I mean, Flynn is, gets very detailed.
Oh,
He
yeah.
usually does it himself. I thought Debbie or Vega used
Yeah.
to be great, and so really good boss that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we were staffing the outreach for the pond last week. We were both at it.
Oh, yeah. Love
So,
that. That's
I know,
great.
that's pretty, yeah.
That's fun. What a cool thing.
All right, folks, let's make it back to our seats. All right, we are going to get back and rolling. Never mind. All right, staff, are we all good? Yep. All right, excellent. So we are moving forward. I will now offer my chair's report for this month. All right, excellent. So good evening, everyone. I want to start off my report with a congratulations to Angel Pena for being selected to be our new Deputy Chief Executive Officer. Mr. Pena will bring a great amount of expertise and experience to this new position. Mr. Pena brings over 25 years of experience in the private and public sector. It was great to hear that his name was one of the top 40 under 40 by Mass Transit magazine. This position is new to the agency, and I believe it was a critical position for us to fill. I want to thank Ms. Johnson for her work in this search and selecting Mr. Pena. I know Mr. Pena will be an excellent leader here at RTD. Welcome to the agency, sir. For the next part of my chair report, I'd like to highlight the creation of two new working groups. One led by Director Banker and Director Chandler to do a thorough review of the board operating guidelines and the board bylaws. The hope will be that these two directors will have recommendations for their executive committee in 2026. And that is to make sure that our guidelines and bylaws are in the most efficient position as possible. I'd also like to mention the working group on improving a welcoming transit environment. I'd like to thank Director Nicholson and Director Pagliari for being part of this working group to observe, study, and bring back recommendations for the full board in regards to enhancing a more welcoming transit environment, along with our RTD stations and vehicles. We look forward to the work that the two of you will be bringing forward to the rest of this board, and also like to thank the Citizen Advisory Committee for working closely with these directors on these endeavor. Finally, directors, I'd like to thank you all for the work you have done for documenting your stakeholder engagements. All of you as directors have met with mayors, council members, county commissioners, business leaders, nonprofit organizations, or your local communities to engage and create the necessary communication channels between the public and RTD. The success of this organization and the success of this elected board falls onto the 15 of us continue to be out in the public. We must continue to build new relationships and strengthen those already existing. Thank you to all for your continued presence and documentation for these stakeholder engagements. With that, I'll turn it over to General Manager and CEO, Ms. Johnson, for your report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Once again, good evening to you, all board members and the public that are assembled here in the boardroom and virtually. I am Deborah Johnson, RTD's General Manager and CEO. Before I delve into my report, you've heard from the chair, everybody that's gathered, that we have Angel Pena here. So it's my pleasure to introduce Angel, who is taking part in his first RTD board meeting as the agency's inaugural Deputy Chief Executive Officer. In his role, Mr. Pena will advance the agency's vision for a customer-focused transit system with a heightened awareness on asset renewals and state of good repair. He has auspices over several departments and divisions, including capital programs, safety and environmental compliance, civil rights, contracting, and procurement, as well as planning. As you heard in the chair's report, Angel has nearly 25 years of experience, and I do want to qualify, he was 40 under 40 back in 2017, not to age him or anything, but just wanted to provide some qualifiers there. And additionally, he has experience across many facets of the transit industry, previously working for what we call DDOT, if you're familiar with Washington, D.C. or a native Washingtonian. Also with WMATA, the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, as well as the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority in Boston, known as the T, before moving into the private sector. I'm excited that Angel made the decision to join the agency and look forward to working closely with him in the coming months and into the future as well. And so Angel, I see you standing close to the lectern, so please join us, and I yield the floor to you, sir.
Good evening, Chair Bouquet, members of the board, GM, CEO Deborah Johnson, and to everyone who's joining us here in person and online. It is a true honor to be here today as RTD first Deputy Chief Executive Officer. And I want to thank GM, CEO Deborah Johnson for her bold leadership and vision. Her national experience and deep understanding of the transit have helped shape a stronger organization, one that is built for today's need, to meet those needs, and prepare us for the future. I am proud to be part of this structure now and to help carry that vision moving forward. Though I am not from Denver, I have spent my career working to make legacy transit systems more reliable, safer, and more responsive to the communities that they serve. I look forward to supporting our RTD strategic priorities and by collaborating with all of you and with our teams to bring our system to a state of good repair, enhance safety, and improve the quality of service that the communities that we're serving. I deeply respect the insight this board brings as representative of each of your communities. And I am grateful for the opportunity to serve the agency in the communities within its 2,345 square mile service. I'm proud now to call Denver home, and I look forward to growing roots here and working together to shape a stronger future for RTD. Thank you.
Thank you, Angel. So this evening, I will share with you just a few highlights and activities that align with our strategic endeavors since the most recently held board meeting on Tuesday, February 25th. So I'll first start out with community value. So on Wednesday, March 19th, I had the opportunity to attend a meeting of the House Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee and gave testimony in support of House Bill 25-1290, which would establish in state law a specific criminal offense related to assaults of transit workers. I believe many of you know that this is something that is very near and dear to me, having been in this space for a while and have seen firsthand impacts from those that are assaulted, and in previous agencies actually lost employees at the hand of gun violence that was directly impacting a frontline operator when I was at LA Metro. So the support for this bill clearly aligns with RTD's strategic priority of employee ownership as providing an optimal work environment for frontline transit workers and other agency employees is critical in achieving overall agency success. And so I want to thank Second Vice Chair Troy Whitmore for attending, as well as members of RTD, workforce, from managers to union stewards, as well as the president of ATU 10001 and light rail operators that provided their lived experience before that committee last week. So bridging both strategic priorities of community value and customer excellence, at this juncture, I'm going to provide a status update on the phases 2 through 4 of the downtown rail reconstruction project. So I have a brief presentation to ground all assembled in our path forward. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Oh, my bad. It's in my hand. So, well, that was funny. Okay, so thank you for indulging me. Really briefly, the outline I have is focused on state of good repair. You heard Mr. Pena reference that, and you've heard me talk about that a lot as of late, because that's where our laser-like focus is, ensuring that we can have a transit network in a state of good repair for the next 30 years. I'll give an overview of the project, the 4 phases, service impacts, and next steps. So before I launch into the details of the rail project itself, it's important to highlight how this project has come to be. And so as we talk about state of good repair, like many agencies, RTD is an asset-intensive organization. Maintaining assets in a state of good repair is a critical effort for several reasons. Doing so guarantees previous investments in the system remain intact, supports operationally safe, accessible, and dependable transit services, preserves investment in a reliable transit infrastructure. And as you all know, the Federal Transit Administration, or FTA as we commonly say, requires transit agencies within its purview to maintain a transit asset management plan, what we refer to as the TAM. RTD TAM's plan continues to be evaluated and adjusted and prioritized to address the agency needs to maintain assets in a state of good repair. Adherence to TAM plan informs intentional development of the agency's annual budget. And just as we know, I sent some correspondence to you all just last week, because there's been a lot of questions and talk about where RTD is relative to monies that we have in unrestricted reserves. Those monies are intentionally to ensure that we can maintain our assets in a state of good repair when we look at rehabilitating the system, renewing assets, and procuring other assets such as rolling stock. So as we talk about agency assets in and of themselves, pursuant to FTA guidelines, we must maintain an inventory of assets and their physical condition. So assets inventory pursuant to an agency TAM plan can range in cost from thousands to millions of dollars, and can include items such as revenue vehicles, as I indicated previously, equipment, and other infrastructure components. Agencies must employ analytic processes or tools to assist in capital asset management, prioritization, and a list of prioritized investments. The rail segments in downtown Denver that will undergo reconstruction are such a prioritized asset. So let me segue into that. So most of you and some returning members have heard me talk about this before, but just to ground everybody in the same information, on Friday, October 7th in 1994, RTD held a ribbon cutting ceremony to inaugurate the first light rail line in the region. Following commencement celebrations, the line was placed into revenue service on Sunday, October 9th, 1994. Just a couple of months ago, with the completion of the first phase of the rehabilitation of the downtown rail, we had an opportunity to celebrate the 30-year anniversary and more or less showcase what had been done relative to do the rail replacement so we can ensure futuristically that we have this viable network for future generations. So as I talked about RTD opening up the rail line in 1994, UTA, being the Utah Transit Authority's TRAX rail line, opened 5 years later in December 1999. So initially, our line was named the Metro Area Connection. It was the only line in the system at that time. The later naming convention would come later, and this line became known as the D line as it traversed the heart of downtown Denver. At that time, the entire corridor stretched from 30th and Downing to I-25, 5.3 miles in total. For context, the entire light rail network now consists of more than 60 miles of track, traveled by approximately 200 light rail vehicles serving 57 stations. So the downtown loop, a component of RTD's inaugural light rail line, is located primarily within the central business district in downtown Denver, served currently by the D, H, and L lines. Trains operate in a street running fashion, meaning that there's no dedicated right of way. Public utilities such as electric, gas, and water lines run underneath the existing paved track. Later in the presentation, I will show a cross-section of the elements of the paved track that will need to be reconstructed. So now I will just give you an overview of reconstruction. So this prioritization that I've been talking about is due to service-related wear and degradation, due in part to de-icing chemicals used on the roadways. To be reconstructed and to have a targeted design life of at least another 30 years, phase 1 of the project included in-depth full reconstruction of 5 intersections in the downtown loop. Phase 2, 3, and 4 will commence most likely in 2026. The numbering of these phases does not necessarily correspond to their order of importance, but are rather segmented, to denote the focus on the specific sections of rail that will be reconstructed in those areas. So now I want to take the opportunity to orient those that may not be familiar with the nomenclature I'm utilizing. So on the screen, you can see an actual photograph of the paved track in the downtown core. And to the left, quite naturally, these colored elongated bars. And so a note on the terminology, these are the technical terms and may be referred to by others using different terms. But as we look at the concrete tie that's identified by the red bar, it is a concrete railroad tie similar to the wooden ties people may be more familiar with. So if you saw an exposed rail and you see those wooden ties, if you were well, you shouldn't be walking across, the track, but I'm certain that many people can understand what I'm referencing. So this is the same thing as an exposed wooden railroad tie. So the track ballast, which is denoted by more or less the periwinkle, or not periwinkle, the aqua color blue. This is the material which forms the track bed upon which railroad ties are laid. It is packed between and below and around the ties. It is used to bear the compression load of the railroad ties, rails, and rolling stock being the actual consist, the rail cars that constitute a train. And to facilitate drainage and keep down vegetation that can compromise the integrity of the combined track structure. Now, the sub-ballast, which is the darker blue underneath, is a layer used to distribute the loads from the ballast to the subgrade, as well as to mitigate climate-based subgrade problems. What I mean by that is during hot weather, you can have rail that expands, and quite naturally, when it's colder, it can contract. And that's why we traditionally have issues. And in most areas that you may be familiar with, that's why they have subterranean rail. They may use a cut and cover, subterranean, underground cut and cover, which is more or less rail placed in a box that looks like it's underground as well, or maybe just a top cover that's in a trench with a cover on top to protect those assets. But here we do have exposed rail. And then lastly, the duct bank that is that lighter color green. It's an underground reinforced concrete or metal container used for laying utility lines, such as electric and telecommunication cables. So wanted to take that time just to orient you so you understand the nature of the work in which we are endeavoring to do to keep our railway network in a state of good repair. So just
Ms. Johnson, I hate to interrupt you. We're having a couple technical issues with the audio, so we're going to take just a quick pause.
Okay, cool.
To restart it.
Yeah, testing 1, 2. Those online, can you hear Mike Smith? If you're there, can you acknowledge?
I can hear you, Jack. You're nice and clear.
Yes, it's
Great.
nice and clear.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for your patience.
Oh, sure thing. That sound crazy? No. All right.
All right, Ms.
So-
Johnson, whenever you're ready. Thank you.
All right, so to reiterate, as we go into the phases, that these do not denote any type of priority. Phase 1 was completed ahead of schedule, as some returning board members may recall, in the summer of 2024. And phases 2 through 4 are scheduled to commence in 2026. So let's delve into this. On the slide before you, there are 5 different photographs with numbers that correlate to the intersections which we successfully completed ahead of schedule this past summer. So the work was sequenced in such a way that not all intersections were impacted at the same time. Vehicular traffic was able to move through these areas while the work was underway. Quite naturally, we worked hand in hand with the City and County of Denver's Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, keeping in mind that we do not have auspices over the right-of-way nor the infrastructure, so had to get permits from them. And as we go forward, that would be the same case as well. So I just wanted to iterate that and more or less stress that we had a great partnership in working with the City and County of Denver. From a communications vantage point, we leveraged with the City and County of Denver, Downtown Denver Partnership, other entities as we put out information and met with different businesses and hotels and other businesses, so they had an understanding of what was coming before them. So moving forward to the next slide. For this phase, the rail segments in this area between the intersections undergoing reconstruction last year will be reconstructed in phase 2. So keeping in mind that we did the intersections, more or less, we're going to do like the straightaway, the track that are within the streets and not at the intersection. The reason why the intersections were so important for us to do first, keeping in mind that there was other vehicle traffic that traversed those intersections. So you had garbage trucks and buses and heavy vehicles that compromised the ballast and the railroad ties, of which was hard for us to deduce without going in. And that's why we made the decision to do those intersections first to support the network, since they're more greatly exposed to heavy vehicle weights. So keeping in mind that this construction will impact the D, H, and L lines. So moving on, as it relates to phase 3, this full death rail reconstruction will take place along a segment of track that runs parallel to Colfax. And so this work does not include segments of track near the Colorado Convention Center, as they were subject to very targeted repairs. And also it's important to note that while we have this rail line, the convention center is newer than the inaugural rail line that went in 1994. So work had already been done. So when we're talking about that 30-year threshold, work had already commenced, and hence that's why there were targeted segments that were done previously. And so, as I said before, the D and H lines will be impacted with this segment. So as it relates to phase 4, this is the Welton Street corridor. Again, a full depth reconstruction of track along the Welton corridor between Welton and Broadway intersection and 30th and Downing. The L line will be the only rail line impacted by this work. One thing I do want to note before I move on to another segment of this is that for those that may not be aware, we have been fortunate through our, it's really called a community grant program now, but in previous years it was called earmarks from the federal government, whereby we have received federal earmarks over the course of at least the past 3 to 4 years, whereby we receive monies, and that is helping with this reconstruction. It's not all of the money. It's basically, off the top of my head, Doug McLeod, it's probably about like 10 million, about 10 million, oops, $10 million. Just checking that my memory isn't faulty. Okay, so going ahead to Kalamath. So Kalamath Street crossing, this, you have the information on the slides. I'm gonna keep it moving because we're getting a little late and I'm getting a little lengthy with my words here, but it's the grade crossing. It's part of the original light rail corridor. This is another segment where you do have vehicles traversing this area as well. It serves the D&H line, and 16 trains cross Kalamath per hour, but also you have vehicular traffic as well. And that's why this is critically important. We did some temporary work in 2024 when we finished the downtown rail reconstruction phase 1 early. We were able to do some work then since we finished beforehand and we had scope, but we're going to go in and do the ultimate reconstruction of that. So as we talk about service impacts, both the D and H lines, as I said, will be impacted. So we're going to reroute those during the work, and they will terminate at Denver Union Station, just as we did last summer. The L line will be suspended for the duration when we get to that phase, and customers can utilize Route 43 bus service as an alternative. There will be route and line changes that will align with the commencement of service changes as we move forward when we do this. So we will ensure that we are being methodical as we move forward, and we'll have a robust communications campaign just as we did last summer as well. And as we know, it's important to communicate early and often, and with the support of my colleagues in communications and engagement, we will ensure we do that. So just impacted bus routes. These are the same bus routes, more or less, that we had showcased last year, but I want everybody to be aware that these bus routes will not all be impacted at the same time, because it's based upon the phasing as we go forward and how we will do work as we progress. So really quickly, the next steps. So we commenced with a request for proposal in December of 2024. I do want to say I'm going to be really brief with my comments here, recognizing that we have active solicitation since their blackout periods. So in February, we released a request for quotes for the Kalamath Street crossing. And that request for quotes basically was due this week. As relates to the request for proposals with the rail reconstruction, that solicitation is due on April 15th. And then keeping in mind, we'll have a better understanding once we can assess the proposals and the quotes we receive. We have a better understanding of what is needed relative to sequencing, and we will ensure that we have communications and outreach campaign launch. And then, as you all know, made a commitment to bring these things back to the board. So you will hear additional information as we come forward with any type of contractual agreements going forward, but wanted to ensure that we provided this information at this juncture to ensure that everybody was grounded in the direction in which we're going. So that concludes my report on this. So if the board office staff can take that down, I will quickly finish my report. As relates to customer excellence, in alignment with the Welcoming Transit Environment Strategic Initiative, the agency has redoubled efforts related to personal safety and security. You heard comments from one of the commenters earlier. I believe it was Earl Lee, who chairs our advisory committee with people with disabilities, who commented on the news reports that he had seen. Our efforts have extended far beyond the expansion of the agency's police department, which is on track for 150 sworn officers by the end of 2025. And to highlight many of these efforts, the Communications and Engagement Department did launch a comprehensive public webpage to communicate RTD's public and personal safety efforts. The link to the page can be found at rtd-denver.com/yoursafety or via a link located at the agency's homepage. It's important to note that all RTD police officers now carry handheld fare validators, which allows them to perform fare enforcement checks across the transit system. Typically, this function has only been left to our third-party security contractor. A campaign is also underway to promote the Transit Watch app, which since its inception in 2014 has garnered more than 45,000 unique users. QR codes linking to app download options can now be found on board transit vehicles and at stations and stops. And as a result of these cumulative efforts and many others, I'm pleased to note that the calls for service were cut in half in February. I believe the commenter said that incidents were cut down, but we're talking about calls and service. And we say calls and service, that runs the gamut. That could be somebody saw somebody tagging an asset, so it's graffiti. They may have needed some assistance. It could have been that somebody was in distress. So I just want to qualify, since I do have this forum, that everyone's quick to assume that somebody was in a state of emergency relative to their personal security being violated. But these calls of service could range from somebody using an elevator where they saw some nefarious activity or something of the like as well. So also earlier this week, RTD implemented a back-end upgrade to a service alert system. So effective last Thursday on March 20th, a long format text messages can now be sent to customers. Previously, the system limited us to 260 characters, and any alerts beyond that length would be truncated or snipped. And so now the shortened messages would then require a user to click a URL, and basically that's not enhancing the customer experience as we focus on customer and community connections with our strategic initiative for 2025. And so following a backend update to RTD system, service alerts can now be up to 1,530 characters long and are in the same format as an email alert. And so this enhancement means that customers can easily see the alert in its entirety as one text messages, and all customers currently subscribe to receive text message service alerts were sent an introductory alert last Thursday. And we have seen through our customer care that customers have basically put forward a lot of positive response. So really quickly, as many of you know, March is Women's History Month, and earlier this month, the agency unveiled a 40-foot bus wrap to celebrate the occasion. The wrap's theme is Moving Forward Together, Women, Education, and Inspiring Generations, and features many women employees, each of whom have made significant contributions to the agency. And so other buses in the series include artwork that honors Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month, Pride Month. We had the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act and the Hispanic Latine Heritage Month. And each bus reflects RTD's commitment to making lives better through connections within the diverse communities that the agency serves. So rounding out, I'm proud to announce that RTD's marketing team was recognized with an AdWill Award during the recent Marketing, Communications, and Customer Experience Workshop hosted by APTA in Long Beach. RTD's winning video, which can be found on the agency's YouTube channel, earned a Best Electronic Media Educational Initiative Award. The video details the ways new customers can utilize RTD services, including amenities, different payment methods, how to validate tickets and passes, and what to do while on board. The annual award competitions offers an opportunity to share industry best practices and to raise the awareness and the value of public transportation. Each year, grant award winners are selected from among the first place winners, and this year, grant awardees will be honored during the APTA Transform Conference that will be held this September in Boston, and there is a designated section of the Transform Conference that is the awards luncheon. And last Tuesday, March 18th, RTD joined transit agencies nationwide celebrating Transit Employee Appreciation Day. As you all know, a day set aside to recognize individuals that do this tireless effort as it relates to connecting communities and giving selflessly of themselves. The agency promoted the event by way of communications campaign that included the launch of a dedicated webpage, social media posts, in-person events, and internal communication. So I want to take this opportunity once again to thank all those that comprise this agency and all the dedicated and hard work they do to make lives better through connections. And last, but certainly not least this evening, I want to take the opportunity to share some updates regarding the agency's leadership team. Greg Smith, who is seated in the back, give a wave, Greg, who recently served as Deputy Assistant General Manager of Bus Operations, stepped into the acting role technically at 5:01 p.m. last Friday. When Fred Worthen departed the agency, who left to join the Jacksonville Transportation Agency in North Florida as the Vice President of Operations. And commencing this Friday, we have Brendan Morgan. Hi, Brendan. He will serve, he's currently, as you know, Senior Manager of Debt and Investments, and he will serve as Acting Chief Financial Officer following CFO Doug McLeod's last official day in the office. I say that because Doug will still be, leaning in a little bit to help with some other activities. Hence, that's why we didn't fully recognize him as being retired today. And at this juncture, I just want to say I cannot thank Doug enough for his tireless efforts over the past 15 years here at the agency, and particularly during my tenure with RTD. Doug was serving as the controller when I first joined the agency, and he was my first hire as the GM and CEO, and I could have not made a better decision. I, along with many here at the agency, will remember Doug for his kindness, professionalism, diligence, and his humor after he signs off on his last official day. And I'm certainly not alone in wishing Doug a bon voyage as he sets off to explore the country in his well-deserved retirement. Please join me in giving Doug a standing ovation, even though he would prefer to go quietly. I would be remiss if I didn't do so. And at the expense of embarrassing him, because he doesn't like that kind of stuff, I will yield the floor and thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson. And of course, speaking on behalf of the board, Mr. McLeod, as I stated during our Finance and Planning Committee meeting, the amount of sacrifice, the amount of time, and the amount of effort that you put into this agency, we wouldn't be in a financially stable position, financially secure position without all your hard work. So this board thanks you for that. At this time, I would like to offer any questions or comments from directors. Director Guzman.
General question, should it please the board, I can work with General Manager CEO Johnson and our Government Relations Specialist, Michael Davies, for an invitation to the Denver Land Use, Transportation, and Infrastructure Committee Chair, Councilman Watson, thank you, to attend and perhaps apprise us of any issues from Denver side, communication from Denver side as well when we go forward with these projects. Just need a nod of approval from everybody and we can work on that as they are the group that I spend a lot of time with, and I love invading their meeting space because I learn a lot about my city, but also it's a great time to connect with that entire committee. And so he has expressed an interest to join us during our board meetings. We just need to schedule it out properly for both sides.
Thank you for your comments, Director Guzman. Yeah, I think we're getting some head nods and thumbs up in that, so appreciate your efforts on that. Any other questions or comments for the GMCO at this time? Okay, moving on. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for your report. All right, moving on to unanimous consent. There are 4 items on the unanimous consent agenda listed under section 15, actions A through D. Those items are for the service planning standards and service performance reporting, the internal audit charter, the proposed 2025-2026 internal audit plan, and amendments to the board operating guidelines regarding engagement with staff and meeting time management. Director Guzman has requested that item D, amendments to the board operating guidelines regarding engagement with staff and meeting time management, be moved to recommended action. So that will be voted on first when we move to that section. If anyone else has a change or discussion on any of the questions about the remaining unanimous consent items, please feel free to advise me at this time. And at this course, we'll be happy to pull the item from unanimous consent. Yes, Director Ruscia.
Thank you, sir. I wasn't able to attend our last audit meeting, and I was wondering if there was anyone who might have any updates since the last one, because it involves our yearly audit plan. Thank you.
Might call on Director Busick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The packet for the audit committee is online and has all the presentations and slide decks for what we've discussed. It's kind of difficult to go through here briefly at this meeting. So I would recommend you start there. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me.
Director Ruscia, would you like that item pulled from unanimous consent? Sounds good.
No, sir. I should have been more clear in that I was wondering if there was any specific highlights. I did see the packet, but I didn't attend the meeting, and I will follow up with Director Busick if I have questions. But thanks for entertaining my question.
Excellent. Thank you for the comments. Any other items that we'd like to see pulled from unanimous consent? Excellent. Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve these items A through C on the consent agenda?
So moved. Whitmore.
Whitmore is the mover.
Second.
I've got Catlin as the second. Those items will pass with unanimous consent. All right, there are 4 recommended actions. Oh, excuse me. I am so sorry. Thanks for reminding me. Are there any no votes on this item? Okay. Any discussion? No, thanks for catching me on that. I see 15-0. These will pass. Thank you. All right, there are 4 recommended actions on the agenda tonight under section 16 for actions D, E, F, and G. The first action, D, is for amendments to the board operating guidelines regarding engagement with staff and meeting time management. For the board of directors to adopt amendments to the board operating guidelines regarding engagement with staff and meeting time management. Do I have a mover? I've got Geisinger as a mover. And a second.
I second.
And Chandler is the second. Is there any discussion on this item? Director Guzman.
It has not been our practice until recently that items that come from executive committee, even if unanimous, are put on unanimous consent. The use of unanimous consent, according to Robert's rules, should only be used thoughtfully, keeping in mind protection of the minority opinion on such matters. I state that because there are only 5 members of the executive committee, and that's only 1/3 of the board, where our regular standing committees have around 7 directors each. So I want to be careful with that type of change going forward, and I would offer this opinion to you about that with regard to this. Board operating guidelines affect all 15 of us and probably should not go to unanimous consent and be discussed here in this body properly before we make any determination to change them. That said, I don't know that we have consensus around these changes. I certainly did not have time to provide feedback, nor was I directly asked for it. I found out about these changes listening to the copy of the meeting on YouTube. when I was able to, after my regular employment had ended the day that you had the executive committee meeting. It was a good conversation. I appreciate all the points and that more work will come from a work committee of directors who I hope will engage in a more detailed way with all of us, because these are things we have to agree to and implement. That said, I am not ready to move forward with this as a director. I would vote no right now, but I would suggest perhaps it would be appropriate to table this recommended action until, let's say, the retreat as a date certain, to bring it back that month after we've had plenty of time to discuss these changes and reconsider the item at that time.
Thank you for your comments, Director Guzman. Are there anything of specific concerns regarding the changes that you had?
It seems to counter itself in a couple of ways. That committee chairs should manage the time of a meeting and how we move through them, but then also doesn't allow that to happen by restricting or allowing a specific amount of time as delineated here. That's one thing. I think it's kind of counterintuitive. Either you trust your chair to manage the time of the meeting and move forward on subjects, and I think that there is a way to do that with respect to all directors who might have a little bit more to say on a subject matter, or we may need to explore a different avenue or thought process with a little more time and concern for that director to express everything. But also, for example, performance committee meets in the morning and we have time limits on the end for everybody that's participating in that, unlike our evening meetings in finance and planning, which can run a little bit later or longer. Really being able to maneuver through that is important. We have seen meetings run well past the planned time. We've seen some finish before the planned time. And so I have concerns as an acting committee chair right now that my hands might be tied if I have to follow some of these rules and we wouldn't efficiently be able to have that meeting. So I think that it's a good start, but there's more work to be done, and maybe input is needed from your chairs and vice chairs of the committees who are really working to make sure that these are efficient and well-run meetings. That's one item. The other item is I do have questions about the use of staff time in this with respect to staff who do an amazing job anyway. I'm confused as a director. I brought this up last year and the year before, that sometimes it feels like I, as an elected director, a part of this committee, am not allowed to ask staff questions. And I have grave concerns about that because I am not often asking questions because I have a personal interest in it. I am conveying messages from constituents, concerns from community, or trying to get information as an elected official to return back to the conversations which this body has so boldly put forward as our goals for this year of interacting with other elected officials and community leaders. And now I'm being told not to do that. That's what this feels like. And so I would like to have a larger conversation with all of you here to seek understanding and try and understand this, but I don't know that we have enough or sufficient time to do that here tonight. And I would suggest that we lay this over until we have an opportunity to have that communication. The recommendations could be sound, but they're prohibitive in some ways and exclusionary in other ways, and I don't know how to do that. Also serving as a director that is chairing two separate committees, which I am humbled to do, I am using a lot of staff time just for the purpose of making those committees work. So as an individual director, am I then going to be penalized in some way when I have to do just director work that is not related specifically to committee? For example, getting a constituent complaint and a violation, 2 different violations submitted to me from the Department of Health and Environment from the City and County of Denver that needed to be addressed as a director of a district where there was a problem and needing to go to various staff members, cuts into the 4-hour time limit here that is listed, effectively inhibiting me from doing any further work with staff on any other matter outside of committee work and that makes me an ineffective director. So by making this change, I do have questions. I understand the purpose, but we need to have some clarification on this, and I need some specific understanding and engagement with the thought process behind some of these rules, where they're coming from and what they seek to resolve, other than just limiting the time that I have as a director to participate with staff. That's all I have.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I'm actually,
Mr. Chair, was that an official motion to table, which would be you need a second, and we would need to address that before we come back to the underlying. Yeah.
So if it wasn't clear, I move to table this until the February or till the next retreat date. And then we can take it back up and consider it at that month's meeting.
is there a second? Oh, Ms. Snyder.
Mr. Chair, if we could just ask for some clarification, the motion would be to postpone the matter to a date certain. So if we could pick a date and then we'll call for a second on that.
I simply don't remember the date of our planned retreat because it has
7th.
changed. June. So I would then say we could bring this back up at the June board meeting.
So Director Guzman, if I
Mr.
may,
Kroll, yeah.
it's typically not something that the board would take an action item up at the retreat. That's just typically not been something that's done. Would you be amenable to having this be a discussion at the retreat, but then return to the? That's what you said. Yes. Yeah, discussion at the retreat, but then have the action item return at the June board meeting?
So we lay this over to a date certain. I'm asking to table this until the June board meeting. So we have time to have discussion between now and the June board meeting around what these board operating guidelines perceivably do. So we can reach consensus on them.
Who's the second?
Right here.
All right, Haruka is the second. Okay, this is a motion to postpone. Before I do make the roll call, this is debatable. I'm just personally a little shocked because there's been multiple communication. We've discussed this in executive session or executive committee. Brought forward, was looking for any feedback. I've addressed this on every weekly update from the chair if there's any specific feedback that we wanted to address. And now we're kind of at the 11th hour. So that's kind of the frustration with it. I believe that if we table this right now, we're just taking away months of time of trying to make our system more efficient, trying to make our system more respectful of our staff, and to address the question of what context do you want. There are requests from directors that take more than 4 hours of time. And the directors do not do anything with that information. Staff are sacrificing hours, if not days, with what is being requested. And again, what this proposes, thanks to Director Guchenritter, is based on the amendment, would say, hey, if this is going over 4 hours, we as the 5 executive committee members would look into it and think, hey, would this, justify going over that 4-hour rule? I don't think it's limiting directors' free speech or inquiries at all. It's just more respecting our staff's time. And again, there's frustration from staff that these inquiries are being made and there's nothing that ever happens or is done with these inquiries. And frankly, we're exhausting our staff with some of these inquiries that don't go anywhere. Frankly, we're not getting, this is more of the agency as a whole. And what my job I'm trying to do as the chair is making sure that we're sustainable, we're respectful of our staff as public elected officials, and making sure the inquiries that we go forward with actually are helpful and meaningful for those who put us in these seats. If we're just going forward with inquiries that go nowhere, that's where the frustration lies. That's where we have it where, there is staff hesitancy when it comes down to actual requests that go to policy change. So I think it is a major, major misstep for us to try to postpone this for months on end as we continue to wear out staff, as we continue to go forward with inquiries that don't help as policy matters. So I urge my fellow directors to vote no on this postponement. Are there any other further discussion? Secretary Nicholson. And then Risha.
Thank you, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I supported these amendments in committee. I said then that they were well-crafted, and I appreciated the work that our chair had done. I still do. I think they are well-crafted, and I think we should postpone them. And here's why. These amendments are not like a normal motion on which we vote on something and it goes into effect and the thing happens or it doesn't. These are binding all of us basically to behave appropriately and to act according to our own, they ask us to be honest. They are guidelines. They are not rules. And so passing them without overwhelming consensus is essentially setting ourselves up for a situation that is bound to fail. I have seen this happen in other organizations. I've seen it happen when I was in school. If we pass this 8-7, those 7 directors can say, well, you know, I don't agree with them. I'm not going to follow them. And if I get caught, then, you know, you can do what you want. And I don't think that's helpful for us. I think in this particular case, and normally I'm a vote on it and move on kind of guy. We have too much else to do. In this particular case, it is worth trying to get as much consensus as we can reasonably get so that everyone is bought in from the beginning. And I think if we force this through tonight, it would probably pass. And then we would be in a situation where a lot of people would be really, really upset with the guidelines that we are all being asked to follow. So I'm a big supporter. I will support this if it gets to a vote, but I think what we should do for the sake of consensus and the sake of everyone's buy-in is push it to the retreat, listen more, and then come to something that we can all live with. Thanks.
Yes, Director Mayor. Sorry, Risha, I saw first. Okay. Treasurer Banker.
I am a new director, so I'm still learning a lot of things. There's no doubt I have a lot to learn and I ask a lot of questions. This particular one did concern me from the beginning. I have felt that I've been given freedom to talk to our staff and ask my questions. It may not always relate to a board goal, but I feel that since we're the governing body, you know, we should have access to our staff and access to information. I do like the way it's written. And both Director Chandler and I are going to be reviewing these and hopefully shortening them. I see most of these items on this, what is it, 4 or 6 page document. It's more voluntary and recommendations. So I would like to go forward with this tonight and move this forward, knowing that we're going to be reworking these things and getting everyone's comments. And at that point, sometime later this year, when we have a draft document, you know, I think that would be a good time to really have a thorough and feisty conversation and see what we can do and move forward at that point. So I would urge that we pass it tonight. And then in a couple of months, we'll be rewriting the whole thing. But I do respect your concern because I also had some of those concerns. I think at this point, we can try to work some of that out and go forward. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Treasurer Banker. Director Risha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I concur with the comments made by Director Guzman and Secretary Nicholson in terms of building consensus. And, you know, it's actually part of our board operating guidelines and our culture, whether we write it down or it's unspoken, that as much as you can, when you are moving policy, that you reach out to everybody, you know, and sometimes folks get busy, you can't catch a person, but a text, a call, an email is not much to ask, especially when something is going to affect all of us because this is internal governance. And again, I'm keeping in mind our board operating guidelines, and it was contentious last year. And I thought we had settled things. But we also assume the best intentions. So what I am about to say, I hope is not interpreted as me attacking anyone's intentions or anything like that. I'm not. But I will be honest in that when I saw the draft, I did respond with some concerns. And I reached out to the board office, I reached out to the chair, and I didn't get a call back. And I thought, people are busy, it's okay. And there's a lot going on. But as noted, this has been circulating at least in executive and amongst a couple of folks who had more knowledge than others. I think not everybody can attend a midday Thursday meeting, especially if you have another job or responsibilities. And I have concerns about how this is drafted, and I don't want to take up too much time. Happy to be very specific. I think one might violate our bylaws. I think 2 lines contradict each other. I have questions on another, and there is one sentence that is clearly a term of art. So for me, I wanted to participate, not just I have a concern, but I thought I could also contribute. In addition, we are still lacking, language here regarding like equity and accommodations and diversity. We talked about that last year, but we have a code of ethics we're also bound to, and it's covered there. So it never made it into the BOG. And I wanted to participate. And I felt like there was no space at the table. And I'm not blaming any one person. That was my experience. So I also know we have a really diverse body and we're really passionate. And when we had our retreat, I will be honest, I walked in with a stomach ache. I kind of had the icky feeling because we had a rough first board meeting and there was like tension. And you know what, I thought about it a couple days later and I was like, whoa, that was my 3rd retreat and we got so much done. Like those work plans were like 80% drafted. We met the chair's deadline and worked around the clock to get like consensus and process. And like, we don't see each other in person a lot, right? Just once a month. But like, when we say, hey, I want to get something done for the good of the order, we really rock it. We've done so much in just a couple months. And for me, I truly believe that, yeah, maybe this passes tonight, but is there a compromise here? Can we maybe not, I would like to table to the retreat for the purpose of us being together. Oh, we do our best work when we're together. Maybe we could hold a special meeting and then it can not be delayed as much and understand more about what it is we're trying to solve, and then it's 15 because these are our guidelines and we're going to be stronger if we have that broad consensus. And that was something we talked about at the retreat, was trying to find the broadest consensus possible. So I feel, just after what we went through last year with the BOG and because of our current guidelines, that it might do more harm than good to push today. But there is a middle ground between those of us who want to wait to the retreat, and I'm one of them, and pass today. So perhaps, Mr. Sheriff, if you're amenable to it, we can find that so we get the best possible outcome instead of just the majority. Thank you, sir.
Perfect. Thank you, Director Risha. Director Catlin.
Thank you. I read through these and I felt that they were pretty common sense solutions. And I know that we have Directors Banker and Chandler that are going to be working on it. I don't see why this could not be a topic for the retreat. And maybe we would have some data from staff to see if this passes, how it's working and how it could be improved. But I didn't see anything too onerous in there. But I think that directors could keep these guidelines on the top of their mind before they make a request. Is this really going to solve a problem? Is this information that the rest of the board can use to make decisions on policy? And I personally think that they're fairly common sense. I understand the desire to perhaps postpone it, but we might find ourselves in the same situation in June. So as I said, I read through them this afternoon again, and I think they're fairly common sense, and they do show that we respect staff's time. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you very much, Director Catlin. I'm going to call on Director Larson next. I do want to remind us we're in debate of postponement, and then we can go back to the debate of the actual merits of the amendment. Director Larson.
Yeah, I just wanted to say brief comment in response to your concern that we are taking up staff time and not doing anything with it. But after we find out, I guess part of me thinks, unfortunately, that's not deciding not to go forward with the policy is not necessarily a bad outcome of that. But my real comment is that I would suggest and that perhaps instead of postponing until the retreat, given that there seems to be some urgency to this, that maybe we just push it one more month and consider it then. Thanks.
Director, or First Vice Chair O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate everyone's comments about caution, but this is at the executive committee hearing or meeting hearing. And based on conversations with senior management, this is a critical issue. And we have a serious retention issue. And I would say that we are not, when we're talking about this as only impacts on us and board culture and board rules, that isn't capturing what this is actually intended to do, which is go easier on our staff. And so the wonderful thing that we've got as a gift is we're going to look at all the board operating procedures. We're going to look at everything within a few months. And I would love to try this and see anecdotally if people are restricted. And if they are, I'll be the first person to back a change to it. But right now, both in reality of answering staff concerns and the appearance of our attention to it would require, I think, requires approval tonight and then a review when we do the full consideration. So I'd ask everyone to move forward tonight. And I promise that if there are more than anecdotal but real restrictions, I'll be the first one to support the change. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, First Vice Chair O'Keefe. Director Busick.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks for your work on this. I agree with the comments of Directors O'Keefe and Catlin. There's no reason to postpone this. Let's move this forward. This is critical and very important for our staff. And Mr. Chair, I do read your weekly updates, so I've been apprised of this. I can't make those 11 a.m. meetings either, but I can watch the replay. So I do that. And we're going to have two directors that are going to be looking at all of these things, and we can always refine these. We need to move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Busick. Secretary Nicholson.
I can defer to Director.
Nicholson, you're recognized.
Fair enough. I thought she had not spoken yet. I actually just have a question for staff, basically, which is what prevents us from what prevents us from doing what is in these amendments right now, simply by the chair asking the executive manager to, don't fill those, requests? Like I'm willing to guess that in previous iterations of the board, going back 20 years, that you have had chairs who basically said, this is happening, please do this differently. And so I'm wondering, like, in this situation, isn't there an argument for, okay, we can't come to consensus. We've got people who are really upset. We've got people who disagree. We've got people who think it's good. Can't the chair just informally say, I'm going to instruct staff to not be, to not let directors misuse their privileges and basically handle this in a reasonable fashion, using your chair's privilege? Or do we have to, is the only way for us to have these kind of changes to alleviate the burden on staff, is the only way to alleviate that burden to do it as part of a formal change to the board operating guidelines? That's basically my question for you, General Counsel.
Ms. Snyder.
Yes, thank you for the question, Director Nicholson. I think you're all aware, you're elected officials. So ultimately, the consequences, I think we know what the consequences are. You're accountable to the voters. What we're talking about right now are board operating guidelines, and they're just that, they're guidelines. They're only going to be, they're not enforceable. No one can be removed from the board. They're really the customs that you all are adopting and agreeing to adhere to. So I think that's really all we're talking about tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Thank you, Secretary. Director Geisinger.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I hear the concerns, and in particular, Director Guzman's, since he's chair and all of that, but I think they are operating guidelines. I think that there is room in here for your needs in terms of working with staff and all of that. And it's really great that we have Director Binker and Director Chandler offering to carry on this conversation and to specifically look at these things. So I guess I fall in the camp of moving forward, passing these, and then discussing them further when we can.
Thank you very much, Director Geisinger. I'll take my chair's privilege before I call for the vote for postponement. Again, as First Vice Chair O'Keefe has brought up, as many have brought up, I believe this is a very critical issue that needs to be addressed. These are operating guidelines that, again, Director Chandler, Director Banker are going to be looking at. For me, it just doesn't make sense for us to, I'm saying, let's postpone it to a month. Okay, well, you're going to get 4 more weekly updates from me in a month. Are any of those going to be read? Or am I going to receive any feedback from that? And again, that's the frustration, is we're at this 11th hour. I never received any feedback going forward with this. So I think a postponement is just trying to kick the can down the road. We have a working group to look at this. They're going to be officially looking into it, doing a deep dive. What this proposed would be, based on the timeline, is making sure that we're being as efficient as possible and respectful of our staff during this process. This is going to be under review. If there's major changes with it, we can look forward to going into the future. So with that, I'm going to take a roll call vote. This is a vote on to postpone this to the June board meeting.
So Chair, if I may, to clarify, a yes vote would be in support of the notion to postpone. A no vote would be opposed to that notion.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes. Treasurer Banker.
No.
Director Busick.
No.
Director Catlin.
No.
Director Chandler.
No.
Director Geisinger.
No.
Director Guchenritter.
No.
Director Guzman.
Yes.
Director Harwick.
Yes.
Director Larson.
No.
Secretary Nicholson.
Yes.
First Vice Chair O'Keefe.
No.
Director Pagliari.
No.
Director Risha.
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Whitmore.
No.
Okay, the motion to postpone has failed. 11 to 4, 4 to 11. Okay.
The chair.
I am also a no vote. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you.
Who would have thought?
All right, so that motion will fail. Back to the original motion. Is there any further discussion regarding the board operating guidelines?
Sir,
Director Rusha.
I'd like to make a motion to divide the question so that we may consider each new operating guideline individually. We have several.
Okay, so the motion is there. Is there a second on that motion? There's very many. Is there a second? Okay, no second, so that fails.
Sorry. I will second that motion.
To break.
To divide the question and consider each individually. There are at least 2 items in there that contradict each other and one that potentially violates our board bylaws.
Okay, so we have a second on that, Mr. Kroll.
Yeah, at this point, as opposed to debating the actual merits of the proposal, you need to vote on whether to divide the question.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Director Rusha.
So thank you for recognizing me. Just in case there was any misunderstanding, I'm only talking about the new additions, not all the pages, just the new additions. That was the dividing the question. Thank you, sir.
So I think we have, so this is looking like, I think 9 additions, so it'd be 9 separate questions. Okay, let's call a roll call vote to divide it then. Treasurer Banker. Director Busick.
No.
Director Catlin.
No.
Director Chandler.
No.
Director Geisinger.
No.
Director Kuchenitter.
No.
Director Guzman.
Yes.
Director Harwick.
Yes.
Director Larson.
No.
Director Nicholson.
Yeah, okay.
Director O'Keefe.
No.
Director Pagulari.
No.
Director Rusha.
Yes.
Director Whitmore.
No.
I'm a no. It'll fail to divide the question 4 to 11. Okay, back to amendments to the board operating guidelines regarding engagement with staff and meeting time management. Are there any further discussions or questions on this? Director Risha.
Thank you, sir. Although I have spoken twice, so if someone else also raised their hand, I'm happy to yield. Okay, thank you, sir. Also, if you could give me a second, because I inadvertently clicked over to cart and I need to click back so that I'm referencing this properly. I guess I'll just start with just the questions I know I have on the top of my head. So when it comes to this new rule about 4 hours of staff time, the board has direct oversight over 2 staff members. How could executive committee authorize somebody else's time? That falls under our GM CEO. In fact, if I would like to speak to a member of our senior leadership team, even as a chair, I still communicate with her and I get her permission. So could whomever brought that forward, could you explain how that works and how that doesn't conflict with our bylaws or our delegation of authority? Thank you.
Director Risha, can you state the question one more time? I'm so sorry.
Yes. How could executive committee, under our current bylaws, which I personally believe executive committee doesn't have this authority, but it's because it's not in the bylaws, but if it did, how could the executive committee or the chair authorize staff time beyond GM CEO Ms. Deborah Johnson or Mr. Jack Kroll, given that they're not responsible for the schedules of all of our other staff? Where does that power come from? Thank you.
The power to the executive committee. We as a 15 board voted for us in these 5 seats during our first January board meeting.
Gosh, can I phone a friend? Because let me just ask. Respectfully, sir, even as board chair, you cannot say to Mr. Carter, you must do this, meet with this person, hold a group, etc. Does that make sense? We don't have that authority. That would be our GM CEO or some other person. So I'm asking if we want more than 4 hours of staff time, because that's generic any staff, where does the authority come from the executive committee to dictate that time? That's what I'm asking. And then I guess the, not the question, but the similar line of thinking is, couldn't someone just get around that by speaking with the GM CEO who, does that kind of make sense? That's who I go to when I need staff time on something.
I might need a little clarification. Director O'Keefe.
I think in this case that we're amending our board operating guidelines and not our delegation of authority or anything related to staff. This is our general agreement on how we're going to interact with staff, it's not a management issue of staff, it's a board operating guideline. So that does fall under the executive committee jurisdiction.
Director Risha.
I think I must just be reading this completely different. Can you, okay, sir, would you mind explaining the amendment that Director Gutschenritter and you worked on the 4 hours? Can you just explain how it works? Maybe
Sure.
that's what I'm missing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so first off, the 4-hour rule was established, I think it was 1996 is the memo from it. In regards, again, if you look at it, it's 4 hours outside of our board goals, so this does not obviously count when we're having discussions during a meeting. This doesn't pertain to if there's questions that are going forward with what we have on it. In reality, what it's trying to cure is if a director says, hey, I want to request, I'll give an example. I want to request the different advertisements we have on all of our buses, and I want to know specifically, what advertisers are where and how often people might be seeing that. It's just a specific example. Then this would say, hey, we as staff think this is going to take more than 4 hours, and we believe that'd be more appropriate for the director who's making that request to make the case to the executive committee, make the case to the fellow directors on here saying, hey, this is why this information would be important to us. And that's why I respected kind of Director Gutschenritter's amendment, because it is directors making the case. Again, the hope is, it's not trying to restrict directors' request or time. The hope is that the requests we make are going somewhere. It's going to an overall policy change or helping us be informed when it comes down to policy discussion. That's kind of what we're kind of curing with it. Again, and these operating guidelines, these aren't, written in stone. It's just, this is what we should be kind of adhering to as directors.
So if I may, I just want to restate it for understanding, because I misread what was written or misunderstood. So if a director knows they have something that will take more than 4 hours of staff time, and this is per month in the 30-day period. Okay, just want to make sure, because that was the previous rule that we had moved away from. Then they would go to 1/3 of the board and ask them to approve that on the basis of speech or policy position. Is that?
They would approve it based on if they believe it's a request that we as or whoever the executive committee is, if we believe that's an appropriate use of staff time, if that makes sense.
Well, okay, but potato.
Okay.
Speech policy position. Okay. Thank you. I'm still not sure how the executive body, or even all 15 of us, unless we make changes in lots of other documents, can dictate staff time outside of 2 people. So is that a question I can ask of general counsel? Because of
Yeah, so just to clarify, let's have your question asked for General Counsel Snyder, and then I'm going to come to Director Padula and Director Geisinger to come back. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So Director Rishup, I'm understanding your question. You're asking, how is it that the executive committee would have authority to authorize for more than 4 hours of staff time when the board, under its bylaws, has delegated all management to the GM and CEO? Is that correct? Yes. Okay. So, as I said before, since we're talking about these are board operating guidelines, and the guidelines throughout talk a lot about collaboration amongst the board and with staff. And so I don't necessarily want to speak for the whole executive committee, but my understanding of how this would work is that they would be collaborating with GM and CEO Johnson and consulting with her about this. I didn't get the impression during the executive committee discussion that the executive committee was suggesting that they would commandeer and take over and direct staff on an individual basis without some collaboration with our GM and CEO.
Thank you very much, Ms. Snyder, for that answer. So I did get a report. Our audio is breaking up a little bit, so we're going to take just a quick pause.
These are just resource to be chair.
Are you allowed to call the question at any moment, or was it only for the sub items? And then that just forces it. Basically. I'm going to.
Nothing that can make us follow it, so it's kind of like doesn't really matter. I don't think it's well, yeah, and that's true anyway.
And like, I have one.
Look at it all again, well, I mean, they're gonna do that anyway. Yeah. The problem is to add staff, you really need to add it to so, I mean, given that, I just think this is. Yeah, and again, I don't think it's going to.
Here's a question. What if we saw that it is recommended that the director? Would that be more flexible?
Microphone test, can those online hear okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Perfect.
Okay, for those listening in, we've diagnosed the issue. It's a problem with the Zoom application on one of the computers that intakes the audio and pushes it out to the stream in the Zoom. The Zoom app on that computer keeps stalling and bugging out. And the only way to get through this is to have to consistently restart the meeting once we know of the audio issues. So if you're listening in online, please continue to keep us apprised of any audio issues that you are hearing, and we'll just have to pause again, restart, and get going. The solution is something that we can't take care of tonight. It'll have to be a hardware solution after the fact.
Okay, I'm definitely on it for you guys then. I'll keep with the chat going on.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started. Yes, ma'am. All right. Oh, thank you. Okay, back where we were, appreciate everyone's patience on that. That was just some technical issues we're facing. So that was what that little pause was about. Who I have next on my list is Director Pagliari.
To respect our staff's time, I believe that there has been enough debate and a couple votes that indicates how people are voting on this. I call the question.
Okay.
Busick, second.
Busick is the second. All right, Director Pagliari is the mover to call the question. Busick is the second. So there's no discussion.
There's no discussion, and you need a 2/3 majority vote to move on to a vote on the main motion.
Thank you for the reminder. Okay, perfect. So I'll make a roll call vote. Again, what we are voting on is to call the question itself, not the actual motion, okay? And to end debate. Thank you. Treasurer Banker.
Yes.
Director Busick.
Yes.
Director Catlin.
Yes.
Director Chandler.
Yes.
Director Geisinger.
Yes.
Director Guchenritter.
Yes.
Director Guzman.
Yes.
Director Harwick.
Yes.
Director Larson.
Yes.
Director Nicholson.
Yeah, okay.
Director O'Keefe.
Yes.
Director Pagliari.
Yes.
Director Rusha.
Sure, why not?
And Director Whitmore.
Yes.
Okay, so we will call the question. And now we're doing the vote for the amendments to the board operating guidelines regarding engagement with staff and meeting time management. All right, Treasurer Banker.
Yes.
Director Busick.
Yes.
Director Catlin.
Yes.
Director Chandler.
Yes.
Director Guchenritter.
Yes.
Director Guzman.
I am a no.
Director Harwick.
Also a no.
Director Larson.
Yes.
Secretary Nicholson.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I'll be a yes.
First Vice Chair O'Keefe.
Yes.
Director Pagliari.
Yes.
Director Rusha.
Niet.
And Second Vice Chair Whitmore.
Yes.
You skipped me.
I am so sorry, Director Geisinger. Director Geisinger.
Yes.
I am also a yes. So this will pass 12-3. Thank you for the discussion, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Okay, moving on, our section action is E, which is for the Board of Directors to adopt the Title VI Service Equity Analysis Report for the May 2025 service changes to comply with federal laws, regulations, guidelines related to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Do I have a mover?
So moved, Guzman.
Guzman as the mover.
Second.
And Geisinger. All right, excellent. Is there any discussion on this? Yes, Director Guzman.
Just very quickly, I want to say thank you to the staff for providing this analysis. I know it's a lot of work to do these and you do them well. You provided a lot of good information. Thank you for providing everything in the packet, including comments and recordings. It made for fun reading on my bus routes and train rides, but I also got through the entire thing and I think it's thoughtful and well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion or comments from directors? Okay, are there any no votes on this action? Okay, I will do a roll call vote. Treasurer Banker,
Yes.
Director Busick. I believe Busick had to join, hop off. Director Catlin,
Yes.
Director Chandler,
Yes.
Director Geisinger,
Yes.
Director Guchenritter,
Yes.
Director Guzman,
Yes.
Director Harwick,
Also, yes.
Director Larson,
Yes.
Director Nicholson,
Sure.
Director O'Keefe,
Yes.
Director Pagliari,
Yes.
Director Rusha,
Respectfully, no.
Director Whitmore.
Yes.
I'm a yes. It will pass 13-1 no and 1 absent. Excellent. All right, we're moving along to the May 2025 service change for the Board of Directors to approve the May 2025 service change as revised and summarized in attachment A, and to authorize the general manager and CEO or her designee to execute contract amendments as necessary for private operators impacted by the service changes. Do I have a mover?
So moved.
I have Geisinger.
Second, Guzman.
Thank you. Any questions on service changes? Yes, Director Callen.
I'd like to thank staff for the analysis, and I also wanted to applaud the public outreach. And I read through all of the comments received, and I don't want to make any suggested changes to this particular service change, but I would like there to be some consideration regarding the C and D line comments that were received, and some good suggestions about perhaps alternating, a C line and a D line so that there is access from the southwest to Denver Union Station. That dropping the C line resulted in either a 1 or 2 transfer trip from Mineral Station. So I know that I'm asking a lot of staff, and I don't know if Mr. Carter would respond. I don't think that I would ask for any consideration in this service change, but maybe if we could look at some possibilities for the future. Thank you.
Sure, I think, if I may.
Mr. Carter, yes.
Okay, I think what I'm hearing is on the C and D line, there was the request for consideration of mixing the C with its destination to DUS and the D line with its destination to the downtown loop. And this is it's one of those things that we took at heart because of the fact that both of them had very high ridership prior to the pandemic, and they were so very, very close. But the E line won out as the route to go to DUS from the southeast and southwest corridors. And but we will take that into future consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carter. Yes, Director Callen.
Thank you. That's all I'm asking is for consideration, because it is clumsy, and I experienced that too. And I understand from our AGM of rail operations that with the downtown reconstruction, that there will be service to Denver Union Station. So we might kind of gauge what the reaction is to that during that period.
Exactly. So with that, you're gaining it anyway. You get both the C and the D. Depends on the year
But
and the
then
time
it
of
could go
year.
away.
Right,
So I
right.
just, I would just appreciate that very much.
Understood. And
Thanks.
we'll take a look at that.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jesse.
Thank you, Director Catlin. Thank you, Mr. Carter. First Vice Chair O'Keefe.
Director Catlin is wise. She said exactly what I was going to say.
Excellent. Any other comments? Director Rusha.
Thank you, sir. So I will be a no tonight for the same reason why I've been a no on these service changes for the last year. And just for, and I'm explaining for our new colleagues, because I made a commitment to some stakeholders in my district, including some elected officials, that I would be a no vote until we had updated our service planning standards. And some of our communication methods, but the service planning standards was a concern for some local governments. And so tonight I'm going to be a no. Jesse Carter, you are still my favorite staff person. Doug McLeod, close second. Please don't leave us. And I'm hopeful that this is the last time that I do this, and I just wanted to say on the record the why and the background. It has nothing to do with staff's work. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Director Rusha. Okay, perfect. Director Guzman.
Just really quickly, thank you. Public outreach is important, and getting feedback and information from constituents is important. So to that end, the rtd-denver.com website, you can do a quick search for service changes or service alerts, and it will take you to the appropriate pages to send more information in. Each of these routes and each of these additional changes had their own tile that a rider could click on when they are familiar with the routes. Said this at the meeting before, I'm repeating it here because I think it's that important. It is also available in a number of languages. I believe there are 7 available now besides English, which is amazing. And so that information is sent directly into our service planning community and provides the best way of getting direct feedback to the planners and to the staff from the public to help them manage these changes 3 times a year when we do it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Director Guzman. Secretary Nicholson.
Thank you. So I live in downtown. In fact, I live right at basically 18th and 17th and Stout. So, you know, when this change takes place, one of the things that was noted last year was basically the way that the lines were reported in like the data feeds that we would put out about them ended up looking kind of funky because they weren't traditional D-line trains, they weren't traditional, and because they were rerouted to Union Station. And so I'm wondering, and maybe this is a question for Mr. Carter, you know, what are those gonna look like in our app? What are they going to look like in the transit app, in Google Maps? You know, what data are we putting into our GTFS feed to effectively and correctly tell people where these trains are going and what is the name of them going to be, both on the trains themselves and, you know, in the data we're providing? Thanks.
Mr. Carter, GMCO Johnson.
Well, first and foremost, Deborah Johnson, General Manager and CEO. So thank you for the question. There's a couple of elements that we need to assess as we go forward, recognizing that we had lessons learned going back to the previous presentation I just gave under the General Manager's report. We previously had some antiquated technology, and as we go forward, we're going to try and ensure leveraging our customer initiative of customer and community engagement that we are going forward with intention and purpose. In interest of full disclosure, I have a meeting with staff tomorrow morning with multimodal entity leads where we're having conversations. But as I indicated before, when we get to that point in time, will we be apprising this body? And so I think at this juncture, I'd be better suited not to address that question specifically because there's a couple of elements we need to assess.
Secretary.
Okay, will you come, can I just ask, will you come back to us like next month or like before this goes into effect and have an answer for, if these trains are going to a different location, should they have the same name? Should they have the different name? How will they look on the map? Because this
Well, it-
was confusing to people last year.
Thank you.
and-
That was my point, sir. We call that interlining, and we will deduce as we go forward what would be appropriate. And yes, I will be highly communicative with this body as I've committed to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Any further questions or discussions on this? Okay, I'm going to do a roll call vote. Treasurer Banker,
Yes.
Director Busick, still absent. Director Catlin,
Yes.
Director Chandler,
Yes.
Director Geisinger,
Yes.
Director Guchenritter,
Yes.
Director Guzman,
Yes.
Director Harwick,
Yep.
Director Larson,
Yes.
Director Nicholson.
Yeah.
Director O'Keefe,
Yes.
Director Pagliari,
Yes.
Director Rusha,
Respectfully, no.
Director Whitmore.
Yes.
I am also a yes, so it'll pass 13, 1, and 1. 13 yes, 1 no, and 1 absent. Okay. Okay, perfect. So we are moving on to our fourth and final action, and this is for the records request fee waiver for members of the media. For the Board of Directors to adopt the attached resolution providing Cora and CCJRA request fee waivers for certain verified members of the media. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Got Nicholson as mover.
Second.
I got Chandler as a second. Okay, I understand we will have an amendment offered to effectively replace the resolution that was printed in the packet that was developed by Directors Nicholson and Directors Rusha over the past few days. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. All right, so it looks like we're getting the paperwork on that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is this version 5 or version 6?
This is version 6. Do you mind if I?
Yeah, we actually need, I think we need a mover and a second on this
Okay.
new version.
I move the amendment that has been distributed by our executive manager and is on the desk. Thank you.
Okay, then we have O'Keefe as the second.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Mayor?
Yeah, so Director Nicholson or Director Rusha, would you kind of walk us through the changes you're proposing?
Yeah, so I'll pull up. So there are 2 pieces of paper, 2 packets on your desk. The first reflects changes that were made by myself and Director Rusha over the weekend to streamline and clean up language, clarifying the eligibility by including students and independent journalists, sharing our records retention policy publicly, giving individuals and organizations the same $300 in waivers, and using the statutory definitions for mass medium and news person, as well as rolling out the funding quarterly rather than all at once to make sure that, over the course of a year, there's still funds available in September, October, November, December, in case, there's a lot of requests early in the year. The second update, which was put together this morning and early afternoon, came from concerns from General Counsel Snyder and concerns from Director Chandler. Sorry, one of those things. It's late at night, and all this does is remove some language around record keeping that was added in version 5. So just reverting back to what was in the version that we passed on Thursday, and then placing into the resolution the language around what the statute, what the press yield statute refers to for news person and mass media, and modifying them slightly to make it clear that it includes, for mass media, includes digital journalism, and for newsperson, it includes any individual doing journalism, even if they're not paid, because the current statute requires them to be paid. So basically the first set of changes, as I said, it does not change the intent of the resolution. It does not change the scope. It simply clarifies the language to use what's in the Colorado Revised Statute and not just what was sort of written up. And then the second bit just sort of reverts two pieces of what was in the changes that we proposed. So before we get to the discussion of the overall package and the merits thereof, I just ask for a yes vote to move to this most recent version, and then we can move forward from there. And so I move the amendment.
Second, Rusha.
Okay. What discussion do we have further on this amendment? Any questions about it? Yeah, Director Chandler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the fact that they did a clarification under 3A and 3B. I really do appreciate that. I am going to be a yes vote on this because that does take into consideration many that are working in not traditional media. And so I appreciate those additional clarification. So I will be a yes vote.
Yes, Director Geisinger.
You know, it's kind of a process issue, but, you know, when we've talked about it various times in the past, I have three things here that have all the same topic. So if I mix them up, I'm not sure what I'm voting on. We got one of them early this morning, I think around 9:30, and we got one of them around 5 o'clock before we ever came in here. We also got some information from our general counsel that I don't think anybody's had a chance to read. So I'm concerned about moving forward with proposals coming in so late. I can make a motion. You know, my motion would be to postpone until next month and, you know what we're voting on.
Okay. So there's a motion to postpone.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion to postpone till,
Mr. Chair?
yes, sir.
Sorry, point of information.
Yes, sir.
Given that we're voting on the amendment right now, if I'm wrong, that's you can't postpone the amendment vote. You can postpone the main motion. And I'll address your concerns, I promise, as soon as we're finished moving the amendment.
So it would be, okay, so we have we're going to finish up.
You can,
Good.
per Robert's rules, you can postpone at any time.
Okay.
You know, the way I would recommend doing this, if you moved forward with a postponement, is we could, upon this returning to the executive committee next month, immediately take the motion to amend, and we would be able to print in the packet both the current version and what's being proposed is being changed if you all were to adopt a motion to postpone to next month's meeting cycle.
Okay. So a motion to postpone, second by Director Guzman. Any discussion on that?
So just to be clear, and you beat me to the punch, quite honestly, I wanted to get the amendment done and then move to postpone rather than not take the changes that have been worked on very distinctly by Director Rusha from Director Chandler. I'd like to take those into account on the item and then kick it back to executive committee. I think that would be the respectful thing to do of the hard work that they've put in, and then move forward, which is what I was going to suggest from the first place. So executive will still have the ability to review all of this stuff, but I want to honor the work that they've put in before we kick it back to them.
Dr. Geisinger.
Does that require a yes vote on the amendment? Because that's a concern. That's the concern I have, is voting yes on something that I haven't had a chance to read and some of the other information that came out at the same time. I'm fine with you bringing this forward to the executive committee and next round. Maybe it's a question for Mr. Cole.
Yeah, you could, like I said, you can postpone it now and then take the amendment at the executive committee when everyone's had time to process it. The directors who made the motion to postpone could withdraw their motion and their second, except you could finish the conversation on the amendment and then at that point subsequently move to postpone again. But it sounds like Director Geisinger's concerns is the very fact of voting on the amendment at this point in time.
Okay.
Yeah, Secretary Nicholson.
Yeah. One last question, and then I think we should take the vote. Voting to postpone, does that kick it back to executive committee, or does that just kick it to the next, like, it's not clear to me what voting to postpone would formally mean. I'm okay to vote to, there's a weird motion that says basically kick it back to the committee. So I'm okay with that. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with just a vote to postpone, because that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get brought up anywhere before. So
I think the issue here would be to just ensure that to clarify the motion from Director Geisinger and Director Guzman that Director Guzman seconded, that you would like this to be postponed to next month's executive committee meeting, where it would be considered and then brought back to the full board for a vote.
I'm fine with that.
Director Guzman, is that fine? Okay. Yeah, Director Rusha.
Thank you, sir. I just, since this is a debatable motion, I just, this passed out of executive committee 4-1. The amendments that were made were in response to concerns from directors, staff, and comments made in executive. Staff gave their feedback the day before executive. And so I feel like this is just, we're gonna have the same result, respectfully. And I think we would be happy to answer any questions you have, but that's why it is the way it is. We, and I say not we, because I was not a yes at the time. But generally speaking,
Okay.
yeah, I'm just gonna stop.
All right. Thank you, Director Rusha. Yeah, Second Vice Chair Whitmore.
So Mr. Kroll, it seems to me the proper motion would be to refer this back to the executive committee and not get crosswise on postponing what or whatever. So, and I think that's a proper subsidiary or one of those type of crazy motions as the Secretary mentioned. Is that correct, Mr. Kroll?
Yeah, that would be an acceptable route to go with this as well. So do you want to, Directors Geisinger and Guzman, withdraw your motion and then restate the motion as a referral to the executive committee?
I will withdraw my second so that Director Geisinger may make the motion.
And I will withdraw my motion and make a motion to refer this proposal back to the executive committee.
Second.
Excellent. I got Geisinger and Guzman as the second. Just to clarify, again, before I take the vote on referring this back to the executive committee.
Me.
Yes, sir.
Do you mind if I speak on my item before you close the vote?
I do. I'm going to finish this statement right here.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, it's just going back to the argument that was being made, with the board operating guidelines. This is a different timeline. These are amendments. This is language that was just given to us. And the most updated, literally is just in front of us right now. I think it's more than a fair ask. It doesn't kill the recommended action at all. It's just we're processing it back into the executive committee because this isn't exactly what was passed through the executive committee. So those are my words. Secretary.
Yeah, thank you. So this is obviously remarkably complicated, and I'll, to be frank, a lot of the back and forth on this is motivated by trying to build consensus so that we can get something done. I started this 2 months ago, right after I took office, and have been working diligently with staff, with members of the committees, with directors to try and solicit as much feedback as I can. And we've made significant changes. There's a reason we're on version 6 of this right now. It's that I genuinely want this to pass in some form because I think the underlying work that it is doing is important. So I am more than happy to continue to listen and continue to make changes. I came into tonight thinking I've got 8 votes to do it. I think there's a good chance if we put it to a vote right now that it would pass, but that doesn't mean that's the right thing to do. And especially for this, I want additional input, and I am happy to listen to every single one of you about what changes you want to see, about what your concerns are. And so my only ask would be, if you're voting to postpone this now, tell me what you think of it before it comes back, because I need to be able to understand where you're coming from and factor that in and try to earn your support for this. So, I'm happy to move this. I'm happy to wait. This is not something that needs to happen tomorrow. This is something that can happen next month. But if we're going to kick it, let's use that time to actually factor in what people are thinking and give me the chance to get you to a yes, because I believe this is good policy. It will help us as an organization. And that is the most that I'm going to say about it, because we all want to get home.
Perfect. Thank you, Secretary Nicholson. Agree. And I appreciate you trying to build consensus with this. And so excellent. Any other comments in regards to Director Risha, Director Catlin?
Thank you. So I will be in support of kicking this back to executive. However, I must state that at this juncture, speaking of respecting time, I spent an extraordinary amount of time helping Secretary Nicholson as a new director. And we were not on the same page, and there was compromise. Every person in this room has touched this product in one way or another. But I had a similar but different proposal. Director Nicholson beat me to the punch. Sometimes that's the way it goes. I was willing to accept compromise, but seeing that Director Nicholson is not comfortable moving forward, I just need to, and this is not an attack on him, excuse me, sorry, Secretary Nicholson. I need to be honest, I'm not sure if I'll be a yes, if this is where we're going, because I worked in good faith, thinking that we had more consensus and that staff needed more amendments, and that's why I gave my time. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Risha. Director Catlin.
Thank you. I think, I appreciate all the work that's gone into this, but I think it's a process situation, and I don't think we want to see an amendment that's brought forth during this meeting or right before the meeting. I think what we would like to see before the next meeting, before we approve this, is a complete package, and that we don't see amendments brought forth at the last minute, that based on all the feedback that we hopefully will give you, that you will have a solid proposal in front of us without last minute amendments.
Thank you, Director Catlin. Any further discussion before I call the vote to refer this back to the executive committee? Okay. I am going to call a roll call vote on this. Treasurer Banker.
Yes.
Director Busick. He's gone. Director Catlin.
Yes.
Director Chandler.
Yes.
Director Geisinger.
Yes.
Director Guchenritter.
Yes.
Director Guzman.
Yes.
Director Hardwick.
Yes.
Director Larson.
Yes.
Director Nicholson.
Yes.
Director, First Vice Chair O'Keefe.
Yes.
Director Pagliari.
Yes.
Director Risha.
Yes.
Director Whitmore.
Yes.
I'm a yes, so this will pass 14-0 and 1 being absent. All right, so this will come back to the executive committee, and looking forward to the work we can get there and to build a consensus.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just
Yes.
I need to be excused. May I be excused? to leave
Excellent.
the meeting?
Absolutely, Director
Okay.
Risha.
Thank you, everyone.
Perfect. We'll see you next month. And we got 4 minutes before we hit our 4-hour deadline, so I'm going to try to make this as quickly as possible. Any report on director activities? All right, seeing none.
Have them in writing.
All right, moving on. We do have to get to this, and that is the review of this is the review of the 2025 committee approved work plans. Mr. Kroll.
Thank you, Chair Bouquet. This is Jack Kroll, Executive Manager of the Board Office. This is really just designed as part of your bylaw to give every member of the board the opportunity to comment on the work plans for all of the committees, as not all directors serve on all the committees. So each committee has approved its work plan for the year, taking their work through February of next year. And so if there are any comments or suggestions from board members on those work plans, now's the time to offer those for the chair and vice chair and pertinent staff for those committees to consider.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kroll. Any questions or comments for Mr. Kroll? Going once, going twice. Excellent. Thank you, sir, for your work. Last but not least, other matters. Okay, seeing none. I appreciate you all for your patience. We have a motion to adjourn. I got Guzman as the mover. We are adjourned as 9:28. Have a good night, everybody.